approaching 50 and experiencing everything there is to experience with RP, from getting a job, managing a career, navigating promotions, meeting a girl, settling down, getting married, buying a house, going through all them milestones, getting my first cane, my second cane, doing cane trying, losing my driving license, being declared legally blind, going through all of those milestones and transition states. I wanted to give something back to the RP community, especially young guys that may be similar to me, that maybe, they could be living in a rough part of Berlin, or, some shady neighborhood in Chicago or wherever, and might just be thinking, oh, this is it, mate, I'm done for. And I just wanted to put some content out there to sort of try and, like I said before, try and inspire people, just to be like, look, you can get out of that situation, you can have a good life, there are tools and tricks you can do.
Ste Johnson, welcome back to the See-Through Podcast.
My boy Lance, how's it going, big dog?
Good, man. Good. It's been a long time. We actually haven't talked in a while.
No, definitely not face to face.
Sometimes podcast, in a way, is the perfect way to catch up, because there's no surface level stuff. It's like, all right, let's just talk about some deep things.
Yeah, so I'll have to just be careful, because we've got that familiarity. I might end up, just forgetting I'm on a podcast entirely and just going at it.
I know, that's the whole point. That's the trickery of it all. I hit you up for this. I was like, hey, I really want to do a really long episode. I want to do my longest episode I've ever done. And I was like, I know exactly who to talk to. So I hit you up. So yeah, this episode is going to be a long one. And we're going to cover a lot of topics. You might want to listen to it in chunks if you're the listener, or if you want to go through it all the way through. I'm going to basically label each part to the best of my ability. So if you want to check out the chapters of each thing we're diving into, but we're going to cover a lot, because Steve is an RP professional and he checks a lot of boxes. He has a lot of things that he's experienced. He works full time, has always worked full time, has a career. He travels the world. He's married, and he has lots of friends with retinitis pigmentosa, and he also makes content. So literally you're kind of the all-in-one RP tool. But I'm not saying you're a tool.
No, if only I was ginger, I could tick like every box on the form. That'd have been awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, man, so I thought you were the perfect person to bring on. And I know you personally, because you've stayed at my apartment a few times. We've, had the RP Fest, 2 of those I've been to. So there's familiarity there. So I figured this conversation would be super easy with you, because 1, you have the background, 2, we have the familiarity.
Nice. Should be good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Plus, I think, to be honest, and I mean this, like to anyone listening, that Steve's super underrated. You post a lot of killer content. The RP show is one. And then also you do individual content. But it's not even really your content is what I even would focus on. It's like, it's beyond the content you make. It's like the person behind the content, the stuff you do in your day-to-day life is
thanks, man.
Is what makes you slept on, because you actually have real insight to things, I think, and you have really unique opinions on the blindness community. You have opinions that differ from what I normally hear on social media, and kind of in like the bubble of, the blindness community, you kind of think outside the box in that regard. So I think picking your brain today and kind of going over your story, I think is going to provide a lot of people with some insights that they maybe never considered or thought about. And yeah, I think that's it.
I guess I've probably got quite a lot of unpopular opinions as well, so that's probably why I'm not like super high profile in the low vision community.
That's a good point, and that's why I bring that up, because you're authentic. You stick to your guns. You have your take, and that's going to be your take. And no matter how many people want to post about the same thing over and over again, telling you what take you should have, you're like, nah, I'm good. I'll have my take, And I think that's rare. You're You're not a follower. And I think it's good to hear from, leaders, I would say. I'd describe you as a leader. I mean, you're a leader at your job even.
Yeah. But I like the concept of, have you heard the phrase, find your tribe?
Yeah.
Like I could make popular content that I think people will like, and that would get me a load of superficial, I guess, followers, interests, people. And even in your personal life, you can do stuff like that. I've never really set out to be Mr. Popular per se.
Yeah.
But I think if you're just authentic, eventually the universe works itself out, and you'll find the people that you're supposed to find. And if you do stick to your guns, the people that come into your life and want to be around you, and you've got them common grounds with, that's how you find your tribe, by being authentic. So I kind of carry that through in all walks of life.
Yeah, because if you're being fake, then you're just kind of being a grifter.
Yeah.
Because then it's just like, all right, this is what they want to hear. You're making content. Like a perfect example would be like, I guess we're just going to dive in. But yeah, the perfect example would be like, the phrase blindness is a spectrum, which I agree with, but I know you have your own take on it. So, but like, that's one thing that's always said over and over and over and over again. So if you wanted to just make some content that's going to be well received, that's a safe win. You can you go make a video, hey, blindness is a spectrum, here's why. But that's not really what you go for. You don't go for the easy wins.
No.
And with that said, what is your take on blindness is a spectrum?
I disagree with that statement straight off the bat. There's my first unpopular opinion. So, speaking as somebody who is legally blind, and has been a white cane user for like 20 years, I think sight is a spectrum.
Okay.
Sight is a spectrum. I don't think blindness is a spectrum. Call me old-fashioned, 47 years of age. I disagree with somebody that's got like a slight visual impediment calling themselves blind, and then telling me it's a spectrum. I have people that can correct their vision with a pair of glasses, but say they're on the blindness spectrum. I'm like, no, you're not.
I see.
Somebody, so in my mind, somebody born without eyesight, somebody born with no eyes, they're blind. In my mind, that's just my black and white view.
You're a purist on that.
I'm a purist. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you wouldn't describe yourself as blind?
I describe myself as visually impaired. Like on Instagram, my handle is the VI guy. I class myself as visually impaired. Depending who I'm talking to, it's not that I'm against the label of being blind. I mean, people see me with a cane walking down the street, or if I'm doing some kind of activity, I sometimes have to declare myself as blind for safety reasons or whatever. Because again, saying visually impaired is a little bit vague, isn't it? Somebody wearing glasses might say they're visually impaired. Mm-hmm. Somebody with quite low vision might say they're visually impaired. But that's not the same as me, who can't read text and needs a cane to navigate the world. That's in the UK. We are classified as severely sight impaired at my level, which is like, I guess, a step up from legally blind and one before blind.
Well, yeah, I think it'd be helpful for people who maybe don't know what is your vision like. That way they can kind of decipher. Like, all right, so you're saying you don't describe yourself as blind, but what is your vision, just so people can kind of hear it and make their own opinion on whether you're right or wrong in terms of your own opinion about yourself, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, I have lost most of my vision. I have, according to the doctors, around 10% of my vision remaining in my left eye. So to translate that into real terms, like I can't read a phone or a computer like as standard. I would have to use voiceover, like at work. Yeah. I can't just use a laptop natively. I use Zoom text, and without that specialist software on my machine, I can't even log in to that computer. That's where my vision's at. And then in terms of just operating the laptop, the Windows, email, all the rest of it, I heavily rely on the voiceover software. In order to read something, I would have to have that super massive, like 6 times magnification, and I'd have to have the colours really inverted, and I'd have to get that in the middle of my left eye to see each character work out what each character is, add them characters together to then spell the word. So it is just easier for me to use voiceover like most of the time. And then for navigating, again, full-time cane user. I use a cane on snow, on sand, on trails in the outback, on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. You know, very rare I am not using a cane. Even just like, 20 years ago when I started using a cane, it was more for obstacle detection, just to stop myself banging into things, because I still had some acuity. I could still spot, terrain, gradients, maybe obstacles on the ground. It was difficult, but back in those days, I used to think I was quite blind, but it's a whole other level when you get into your late 40s and you're like, as your sight shifts over the years, you suddenly look back and think, okay, wow, I would love to be as blind as what I used to be.
That's funny. Yeah, no one said that yet on the podcast. Looking back, because you hear that about age, where it's like people when they're 50 look back at their 30-year-old self and are like, oh, I look so young and good. And then,
well, this is why I do sympathise with people that say blindness is a spectrum. I sympathise. I get why they say it. I just don't like it, because I think it's misleading, and I also think it's derogatory to blind people who are born without sight, who've never seen, and operate this world using braille and a cane from, being a baby right the way through to adulthood. I think that is blind.
I see.
Everything else, I think, is just, sight is a bit of a spectrum. But I sympathise, because when I first started using the cane, I had pretty good acuity still. Like, I was in that horrible phase where, yes, I need a cane, but I can also text on my phone completely unassisted with no voiceover, no software. And I was in that state for a long, long time. And, that was kind of difficult for the public and for friends and for family.
Yeah. I know. That's why I say, like, I agree with the blindness is a spectrum thing, just because I know certain blind people who are fully blind also agree with it. But there's, there's never a one size fits all either. And I think that's what I will agree with you on. There's no one size fits all. Like,
each to their own. If that's what the term people want to use, then
it's like,
have at it. You know what I mean?
It happens to me too. Like, I'll go on someone else's podcast or whatever, and they'll use that in the headline of the title. They'll say, blind so and so, and describing me. And I'm like, hey, in my mind, I'm like, I never described myself as blind. But you're advertising it because I think what it does is it signals something easier, right? So like when you say blind, it's instantaneous. Okay, this person can't see, but which is what the phrase "blindness is a spectrum" hopes to solve, right? It hopes to solve that. Hey, it's not that black and white. There is some gray area to it. You can, need a cane, but still be able to text on your phone. And then when people do hear visually impaired, they're like, oh yeah, you need glasses, or then when you say legally blind, they're like, what is that? No one knows what that means. So then you say low vision. That one seems pretty good to me. Low vision. I think that's pretty well. It sounds nice to me. Like I think because I try to think about it. All right, because I'm not legally blind, right? So when I do enter that phase, I think about this. How am I going to describe it to people? And I will admit, I don't think I'm going to describe it as I'm not going to describe myself as being blind. But then there's like a distinction. Like, is it blind, and are blind and blindness the same thing? Because blind you could argue that being blind is fully, I would argue that lights and shadows is the same as not seeing anything. But like, is that blind? And then blindness is, legal blindness, like, is blindness a spectrum? Blindness could mean, you have 10 degrees of vision, but you can still text on your phone, but you need to use a cane, so it's an incredibly complicated thing that, I think the blindness is a spectrum, like, phrase is used to like help explain that to people, because that seems to be like the biggest universal issue is like that I hear it over and over from my guests is like,
I feel like
people get mad when I use a cane and use my phone, you know. So it's like
I think the reason why I have an issue with the whole blindness as a spectrum is I think because of the absolute surge of influencer type people that have got, in my estimation, pretty good vision, right?
Yeah.
They're not legally blind, but they are low vision, but they've not been classified by a doctor as legally blind. They're just in the low vision sort of, and I'm thinking like they're at the beginning of their, I guess, sight loss journey. So when they identify as blind and say it's a spectrum, it's always that cohort of people. Do you know what I mean? It's always the influencer type that are trying to get rich from being blind or trying to do all this other stuff. They're the ones that seem to hammer the blindness as a spectrum thing. You don't see as many totally blind people engaging in that sort of activity.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that the legally blind world, most influencers are in that legally blind space. You're definitely right about that. But yeah, I think like isn't low vision the same as legally blind though? Like that, sometimes I get confused over that.
Yeah, me too. And I think it varies, doesn't it? I don't know. Like in the US and the UK, at what point from a, I guess, metric point of view you become legally blind.
Yeah.
Because I know people that tell me they're legally blind, but they don't use a cane.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, okay, you're legally blind on some kind of metric or doctor's chart, but you can still use your phone, you can still use a cane, and that's possibly not the same as someone else who identifies as blind.
Yeah, I mean, I think your main point is like you can't deny that having some vision is incredibly helpful over having no vision at all. Like there's a big difference between having some vision and no vision. You know, even if it is just a little slither, you know, like
yeah.
But you know, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. Like for example, like my mom is legally blind, never learned to use a cane. You know this, and I would describe her as blind because this is my metric, and maybe this is a weird metric in how I use it. But if I were to just drop her off in Midtown Manhattan with no phone,
she could not navigate around Midtown Manhattan or across the street, could she?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and
like you have to make it home.
Yeah, she wouldn't. Yeah,
I don't think that she would be able to do it. She doesn't have the vision enough to like figure out what she would need to figure out. And I would argue, I've been out with you. I would argue that I could say the same thing about you, that if I dropped you off in Midtown Manhattan without a cane, that you wouldn't be able to make it back to my apartment.
I could get to your apartment, but I would not be in one piece.
Yeah.
I would definitely have broken limbs and possibly been run over, because I don't have that acuity to walk with. Even on uneven ground.
Yeah.
I would not know that ground is uneven until I trip over.
So my kind of take on if you can describe yourself as blind is if you rely on tools to navigate and do your day to day. That's kind of my take on it. And then some people who rely on tools still can see. So I would argue that they're blind, and I think that's the blindness is a spectrum kind of phrase means to me. Yeah. But I do think some people. I will agree with you that there are some people who describe themselves as blind, and I think the same thing. I'm like, I don't think you're there yet.
No. See, I'm not against them doing that. I don't do it, is what I'm saying. You know, if they want to do that, that's entirely up to them. But the irony of it is, when the people that I'm talking about, when they do it, they're the ones causing the confusion, ironically, because they're out there saying they're doing that to bring awareness, but what they're actually doing is fueling the fire to a degree.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's honestly a good reason for people like my mom to use a cane is because what she's signaling is by not using the cane, even though she needs to use it, is what she's signaling is she doesn't need the cane. Therefore, she's not blind.
Yeah.
But then when she can't see something, everyone around her is like confused that doesn't know her. So it's like it's incredibly complex, and there's a lot of gray area. And I think blindness as a spectrum has some flaws, but I think for the most part it's pretty an effective phrase. But going back to your point about influencers, you got to ask yourself why do they describe themselves as blind? You know, is that a, sometimes I question it. I'm like, are you describing yourself as blind so you can have a little bit more clout in the community, or a little bit more buzz to your name, so you get more followers, or you know, or are you describing yourself blind from a purely advocacy stance? Sometimes I question the purity of it, you know.
Well, if I was to go down two routes here, right, and go down my negative, cynical side,
yeah,
and then my positive, sunshine side, right. Here's my take on it. I think, from a positive point of view, I think sometimes people do that with good intentions, just to simplify the message, because it's so difficult to describe for all the reasons we've just done. So it is just, if I was going to be positive about it and say, oh yeah, totally on board with the whole blindness spectrum, it is a lot. So, I mean, I guess I'm slightly hypocritical in that way, because I understand why they do it. I get it. You know, it makes total sense. And if you're doing a 60-second reel, it's so much easier just to say, I'm blind and this is how I make a cup of tea, or whatever it is that they're doing. Rather than say, well, I'm sort of semi-legal blind, partially sighted.
Exactly, it wastes time.
So you know, in that regard, it makes sense. And to that end, I have done similar things like that myself. Not on Instagram, not in my content per se, but when I go skiing, I wear a vest, and on the back of my vest, it says just blind. It doesn't say blind skier, it doesn't say blind athlete, it doesn't say low vision, partially sighted, blindness is a spectrum. It just says the word blind. But the intention of that is, if I'm skiing down a mountain at 50, 60 miles per hour, I do need the person behind me or the people overtaking me or approaching me to know that information, and it's for that purpose. You know what I mean? It's like I'm signalling, to your point, have a sight issue that you absolutely need to know about, because we don't want to crash into each other on a mountain. And again, if I'm doing some kind of extreme activity or sport, you might want to, you know, identify. So the positive side, I understand. Then if I go on, think about my negative, what would be all the sort of negative reasons why people could do it? I mean, one could be great clickbait, you know, I'm blind and blah 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 straight away. It's a good hook, isn't it? It's a great hook, way of making you know, it's a great hook, it's a great content grabber. And it could be a great way of, you know, just eliciting a response from people. Yeah. It's a good trigger, isn't it? So they're my two thoughts, both positive and negative, as to why it's such a thing. Yeah,
and both are valid. You know, I definitely think that it's just a signal. Whatever's the fastest way to communicate something. I think people know the word blind, you know, just like they know the word, you know, deaf, you know, or I mean, some people say hard of hearing, you know, or you know, or you're saying, oh, I'm visually impaired. If I hear visually impaired, I could assume that you just have you just need glasses, or you know, that type of thing, or maybe you just don't see sharply from close up or far away or something like that. But yeah, then low vision, in my opinion, I group low vision in with legally blind. They're like the same thing. And that's what I always grapple with this, because I'm like, I'm not legally blind, so I'm like, how do I describe myself? You know, like, because I have a reduced field of vision, but like, I don't know. Sometimes it's confusing. It's like there's no home for this part of the phase, you know. So I feel kind of homeless in terms of like the blindness is a spectrum. Like on that spectrum, it's like, I feel like I'm on the spectrum, but I don't feel like it. It's, you know.
See, now you're sort of feeding into my point here, aren't you? Because how useful is it saying to somebody, I am on the blindness spectrum.
Well, they don't know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's impossible to quantify. So, again, like, if you want to say to people you're blind, and you want to say, well, blindness is a spectrum, again, like, if you're saying that to the sighted community, like, how useful is that to them? What does that mean to a sighted person if you say, I'm on the blindness spectrum, or blindness is a spectrum? If the intent is to tell them how good or bad your vision is, then it doesn't achieve that goal.
Yeah.
If you say you've got low vision, I think that achieves more. I think that's more understandable to a great many people. If you say, my name's Lance and I'm low vision, I think that'll prompt.
And you're
someone to say,
holding the
okay.
cane. You have a cane with you, and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm low vision. And it's like, because what that signals is like, hey, I can still see a little bit, or even, you know, I can still see enough to see my phone, but I still need the cane to not, you know, run into, you know, bikes that are locked up against the fence. And like I recently had an incident with the ferry that I took you on here in New York.
Oh yeah.
So you know how, like, to get to the ferry, you have to walk down that long, it's like a pier almost.
Yeah.
So there's like people fishing there, and I was walking. I had my brother with me, and then my friend Brad, and somebody had set up fishing poles leaning against it, and I basically walk. I kick the fishing pole. I didn't see it, and then I like pick it up, and the fisherman's like, what the hell? What are you doing? And then I pick that up, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then I start walking again. He had another pole. And then I kick his second pole. And then I pick that up, and he's really getting pissed off now, because it almost seems like, what are you doing? He's just like, watch where you're going. That's what he says, watch where you're going. And it's kind of awkward because, like, my brother's there, and like my brother doesn't have RP. My sister has RP, but he doesn't. So out of my two siblings, there's three of us, right? He's the one who didn't inherit RP. So I think he has a unique kind of point of view on that. But I don't think he's seen it in action that much. So like, I think he noticed it the last time. I think he noticed my vision declined, you know, because then we were also at like a comedy show, and we were going down some steps, and I just literally had no sense of direction where I was, and I was like looking down at the ground trying to find where the stairs were going, and he had to like lead me in the right direction. So he's like, oh, he said, it's like, I never used to notice stuff like that with you. But anyways, it's like, but see, that's the weird part about it is I go all around New York City. I never use a cane, and for the most part, I have no incidents. But every now and then I'll have an incident where I kick a fishing pole, or I get turned around in a dark stairwell or something like that. So do I, you know, just use the cane always just for those few incidents, or is, you know, it's just complicated because it's like the phase I'm in, like, it's almost like I can't justify the cane.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
you're in the worst phase. Like I remember, like, going through this. You are in the hardest phase by a long way. It will get easier and easier and easier the more you actually lose your vision, which sounds crazy to say out loud, but being a situational cane user is the worst. It's
okay.
I mean, being a situational cane user, it's psychologically demanding on you. Do I need the cane? Do I not need the cane? Gives you a false insecurity. One day you're walking along, you think you're fine, but then you hit things like fishing poles sticking out, or whatever. And it's just that concept of being a situational cane user. Like, do I just use the cane in the dark when it's really low light and I really struggle? But then reconciling that with yourself and other people of how you can be using a cane at night in dark places, but then the next day walking down the street without a cane, that's such a head wreck for everybody.
Yeah. No, exactly. And It's like I have, a white cane, like a traditional white cane. I recently bought a ball tip for it just out of curiosity. So I'm like exploring it more. I'm like, I have it right next to my desk. And then I also have like an identification cane. I used to have a all black identification cane, but then
I remember that.
But then I was like, the more I thought about that, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why I would have an all black cane, because no one would know what that is.
Because it totally doesn't identify you as low vision.
So it's like I was doing these like mental gymnastics, and I was like, if I have a black cane, it makes it cool. It's my take on it. But in reality, it's a utilitarian tool. That's how you got to look at the cane. It's like, I know some people deck out their canes and have fun with it, put like glitter and sparkles on it, and that's fine. I think that's fun. You should have fun with your cane. But in my personal approach to it is like, some things should just be like a utilitarian tool. Like you could put sparkle and glitters on like a hammer, but does it make it hammer? Does it make a hammer any better? I got some sirens going on.
That's me getting cancelled. They're on the way.
So then now I got a white identification cane. I never bring that out with me either.
Yeah, did you see what happened to my Ambutech cane this week?
Yeah, yours fell into the water.
He did. If anybody wants a free graphite Ambutech cane, there is one in Lake Geneva in Switzerland.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think we've kind of covered a lot of the blindness is a spectrum thing. And I will, before we move on, I will say the blindness is a spectrum thing, I feel like changes over time. I think there's no one size fits all. If you want to identify yourself as blind, you're allowed to do so. No one's telling you can't do whatever. No one's telling you what to say or how to describe yourself. It's just me and you are just having a discussion about the logistics of the phrase, because there has to be a line drawn somewhere, right? So like, where does that line start? That line for you starts further towards the blindness side, the fully blind side of the spectrum. For me, it's a little behind. It's more not maybe center of that line. I don't know. And then for some people, it might be a little further left. So everyone has a line, where they draw it on there. But I think at the end of the day, it's safe to say it's a personal thing. But you just mentioned you were in Geneva, and I know that you went there for one day. You left the UK. You live up north near a Manchester area.
Yep.
And you left for one day and came back. So you flew to Switzerland.
Yeah, we just thought we'd do something cool this year.
It's you and your wife.
Me and the wife. So we decided not to bother with birthday presents or anything like that. So for her birthday, we decided to go to what we call, it's quite popular here in the UK. It's known as an EDT, an extreme day trip. And they've become quite popular with, the reduction in flight costs and stuff like that. So really popular in the UK. So both of our birthdays are in March, and we decided for Anna's birthday we'd fly and go to Switzerland for lunch. Very rock and roll. And for my birthday, I wanted to go have pizza in Italy for the day. So that's what we're doing in March. So on Wednesday this last week, we got a flight from Manchester. It was 1 hour 30 minutes into Switzerland, into Geneva. And then in that airport, if you go downstairs, down the escalator, they've got like a sweet, like awesome train network. Really nice, double-decker, fancy train. It's just blasts out of the airport. 6 minutes, you're in the centre of Geneva. No stops, no messing. No, not even going outside. Just get off the plane, get down the escalator, get on the double-decker fancy train, straight on the top floor, and then boom, straight out the airport. 6 minutes into Geneva. And the funny thing is, we got there and we walked out onto this like bridge. It was kind of like in between the old town, where all the old medieval cobbled streets are, and then sort of the more modern part of the city. And we walked out onto this bridge, and my wife was taking photos of the big jet that they have there in the centre of the city. It was the tallest water fountain in the world. It's like a huge column of water that blasts straight up into the air, about the size of the Eiffel Tower. It was the biggest in the world until the Middle East recently built one. That's bigger than it. But anyway, she was taking a photograph of that, and I went to fasten up my the zipper on my jacket, and my cane, my beautiful Ambutech graphite cane with the conical aluminum connectors and my air-filled rover wheel that I love, had a freak accident where it sort of bounced awkwardly on the ground and went through the smallest gap in this railing off the side of this bridge and just plummeted into the water. And oh man, what a situation to be, you know, middle of a foreign city that you've never been to before. We're about to do a walking tour around a medieval sort of narrow streets, cobbles, steps everywhere. A cane would have been awesome for that task, but I had to do it with no cane, just holding on to Anna.
Some scuba diver is gonna find it and be like, "What kind of scooter is this?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never seen this. Where's the base of this scooter? Yeah, because your cane, and I've seen videos with it, and in real life I've seen you use it. But you use a cane, white cane with a wheel on the end of it.
Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes
Yeah.
I use all the canes available. So you were talking about the ID cane. That was my first cane, the ID cane.
Yeah.
And like you, I rarely used it. Rarely used the ID cane. It's just didn't take to it. But I use the ID cane more now than I did when I probably needed the ID cane. So for example, I will use the ID cane. Let's say I'm going to the bathroom on a plane, like a massive long guide cane with a roller wheel on it. It's a bit like trying to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Like, talk about overkill. Why do you need a massive long cane and a rollerball on a plane?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I see.
It's just overkill. So nice little ID cane, lets everybody know the score. You can sort of feel around if you need to get to the bathroom. And I also use the ID cane in heavily crowded areas, like if I'm in a nightclub or, you know, a concert or a gig or something like that. Again,
Well, let me ask you this: do you only use it when you're with your wife, or you break it out solo? Like, because I feel like, you know, usually, you know,
It's a great question.
The ID cane is like, mainly I feel like people use it when they're with someone who has vision.
I would say 100% of the time, I only use the ID cane when I'm with a guide.
Yep.
I would never use that solo, because I would need the other cane to get to wherever I am in that scenario. But if I'm just with, like, if I go out on a big night out with all the guys, say we're going on a pub crawl or a bar crawl, as you might call it, or bar hopping. If we're on that kind of gig, then, and I'm out with all the guys, then I've got a team of guides with me, so I don't necessarily need the rollerball, because I'll be holding on to the guys, or they'll be holding on to me. And again, if you're in a, I don't know, let's say you're in Dublin, in a really packed out bar and it's rammed wall to wall. Again, the ID cane is just handy for everyone to see that I've got a problem, but we're working our way through the crowds, holding on to my friends, or they're holding on to me, pushing me along through the crowd. So if I'm out with guides, I'll probably use the ID cane a lot. If I'm going in the office at work, I tend to use my cane with a marshmallow tip. That's fine for just, you know, two touch around the office, carpeted area. Don't really need the wheel. If I'm going out somewhere, you know, where I don't know what the train's going to be like, I'm on and off pavements, I'm on trails, all kinds of different ground, to be on the safe side, then I would take the wheel, because that will cover everything.
Covers everything.
Try to use all the tools at my disposal.
Yeah, and you with the RP show, you guys made a video about which tip to use. Yeah, so you travel a lot. That's one thing that, you know, if someone were to know you or follow you online, they would see that you travel a lot. Why is that? Why do you travel so much?
Well, I'm just one of the people that I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm going to be going totally blind, and I'm not one of them people that is sort of materialistic. You know, I'm not interested in having a super big house, and I don't wear designer clothes. I have this sort of strap line that I'm famous for, which is spend your time.
Okay.
And I kind of obsessed with spending my time, and I this is kind of my core principle in life, and it's probably what shapes a lot of my sometimes a little bit too black and white thinking, I guess, because I, like you said before, I'm very direct in how I think and how I act and what purpose that serves, and I try to focus on what serves me best. So I like to have a good life, and I like to enjoy myself, and a weekend off sat at home doing nothing seems to me like a wasted weekend. You only get a couple of thousand weekends in your lifetime, and that's it, gone. So for me, I like to spend my weekends like they are the most precious commodity available. Time with friends, time with family, and that's why the travel comes into it. I love to spend, in the UK we have great holiday culture. Everybody in the UK pretty much has a 2-week family vacation at least once, twice, sometimes many families have probably three times a year going on holiday. Most contracts in the UK, employment contracts, tend to have around 25 paid days off, holiday, vacation time, whatever you want to call it. It's a sort of standard. I'm lucky in my job. I get, I think it's around 40 days off paid holiday time or vacation time. And I don't like spending that time just having a random day off sitting on the couch watching Netflix. If I've got time off to use, I like to travel. So yeah, it's probably my main hobby, traveling.
Yeah. So you're not a homebody.
Oh no.
Okay. No, yeah, spend your time. I think that's a great phrase, and I think people forget that there is limited time. Like you said, there's only a certain amount of weekends you're gonna have.
Oh yeah, I'm lucky as well because I'm surrounded by a lot of my friends work very, very hard, like super hard. I've got a lot of successful friends. I've got friends that have got their own businesses.
Yeah.
Friends that have got great jobs. Friends that have got really nice houses, and really some quite wealthy friends. But when I weigh it up, like, they also probably don't go anywhere or do anything to a degree. So I'm like, well, what's the point then? What's the point in having all of that, all of those resources at your disposal, and never going anywhere or doing anything or using them, just living for the weekend? Maybe go grocery shopping on a Saturday, do a little bit of work on a Sunday evening, and get ready for Monday morning, and then boom, you're straight back into it. That's not really freedom.
I hear you, but you also work very hard at your job too, and I think you use, So I think let's describe that. Like, what is your current job?
So I work in the telecoms sector, and I head up 3 teams essentially. So I have a small team of project managers, I have a small team of analysts, and I have a small team of what they're called learning experience designers. They're essentially like a training department that create electronic training modules, and essentially I am accountable for rolling out new products, services and change to the organisation that I work in. So if the company's going to sell a new product like an iPhone, or they make, I don't know, whatever it is, some kind of telecommunications type product, my team will have to sort that all out as a project, from the impact assessment to gathering some of the operational requirements, doing the training rollout, working out where in the world that needs to be rolled out. So we've got some offices in Europe, we've got offices in London, we've got offices in Manchester, and one of my project managers will pull all that together, work out who all them impacted teams are across all the different divisions in the company, work out how you're going to roll out that change. Obviously my analysts will do what we call requirements, so that's things like just gathering can be some of the functionality, some of the specifications, the processes, maybe documenting processes and workflows and all that kind of stuff, and then they'll hand that over to my other team, who will then build all the training content and work out how's the best to roll this out. Is it bringing everyone together in a meeting and training them? Is it making everybody do a course? Is it just a video that they can watch to learn how to do this new thing, etc., etc.? So this is where it gets very interesting, right? So my job sometimes requires me to understand very technical, detailed specifications of either a product, a technical product like a firewall or a router or a modem or something of that nature. It might require me to see processes and understand how this may flow across an organisation, from, I don't know, the billing department to the service department to the contact centres, finance, whoever, and often requires lots of detailed reading of documents. And then the other thing that's challenging is I'm often required to do presentations, and this can be, stood in a room presenting to a small group of people. It could be stood in a boardroom presenting to my whole department or just my team or other departments, and it a lot of the time requires me doing presentations to senior leaders in the organisation, director level across the company.
Yeah.
And if you can't see what you're presenting, that is quite a challenge, as you can imagine. So this is it's quite an interesting dynamic to have somebody like me in that kind of role.
No, yeah, I wanted to bring that up because, we're talking about travel here, and I wanted to share that, on top of your time traveling, your work week is full. So you use your time off to max it out and see the world or feel the world.
Well, we have that phrase, don't you? Work hard, play hard. And because I have a busy, sometimes very stressful job, it's nice to let loose at the weekend.
Yeah, I think you're a perfect example of this, and I think me and you have talked about this in the past, where it's people like you who work jobs, right? And like my mom, who worked full career as a school teacher. You're not the influencer because you're at work.
Yeah.
But somehow the influencers who aren't at work, who end up making all the content, speak for people like yourself. They end up being the voice of the community. And then the people like you who are at work and just don't really have the full time, all this time at hand to make content, end up being the voice for the people who probably, if you ask them, don't even need a voice. It's just something I noticed because, there's a high unemployment rate in the blind community. The numbers vary, but even on the safe side, you could say 70%. So that means 30% is working. I don't think you hear from them that much on Instagram or YouTube. I think they're just working and they're just living their life, But the problem is with the 70% is they have, a lot of time on their hand. So, and being an influencer can be lucrative. So then they use that time to try to be an influencer. And I think that the space is kind of flooded at the moment. I think there's a lot of people trying to do the same thing. And it's kind of becomes stale, in my opinion, the type of content that's out there. It's kind of redundant and stale at this point. It changed. Like even when I started the podcast 5 years ago, it felt different. Or maybe I just kind of grew desensitized to hearing things or whatever it is. But it just feels different, and I think it's crowded, and everyone's playing it safe and saying the same things over and over again, and it's created a big echo chamber. But I just wanted to make that point because I feel like don't sleep on the people who are working. Don't sleep on the people who are just going to their jobs and not posting content. There's a lot of blind people if you're looking at the blindness as a spectrum, legally blind, low vision, blind people. There's a lot of blind people like that who are working and not posting about it.
Do you know, that's such a great point. I would love to see on my Instagram feed some high performing blind or low vision people.
Yeah.
But they're not there. Do you know what I mean? There's no one really for me to look up to. I don't really have any RP idols. I don't have any low vision idols because, like you say, to get to the top of that algorithm, to get to the point where you've got millions of followers,
it has to be your full-time job. Yeah.
You're probably an unemployed blind person.
Yeah, so, or you've somehow cracked the code enough to make it your job.
Yeah.
Where that's all you do. but it's
you're
one
either
of-
an unemployed blind person or a hot female. Otherwise, you're not making it to the top of that algorithm. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what I post, it never will like contend with that. I mean, like you say, you know,
Yeah.
I post, you know, real content, and maybe the real content isn't as entertaining, so maybe that's, you know, another reason why. But there isn't. You make such a great point. There's just not.
I think they get
if it's-
overlooked. No one thinks about them, I think.
Yeah, they don't think about them, and they're not making content either, are they? That's the other problem. There's, you know, if there's someone out there that's got similar vision to me, and they're killing it as a lawyer or a software designer or some kind of really high performing, you know, they could be a CEO of a company or whatever they're doing that. They're not doing influencer stuff, so you just don't get to see those people, and that's, you know, that, I guess that's just the nature of it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I also think it's possibly a generational thing. I think you're about 10 years older than me, right?
47 next week.
Okay, so you're
3 years off 50. That's terrible, isn't it? 3 years off 50.
So you're 13 years older than me. And then there's people who are like 20, you know, now so like there's like influencers now who are like 20 years old. So then I got 14 years on them. And it's just, it changes, you know, like the generational approach to things. And then like if you talk to someone who is, you know, legally blind and they're in their 60s, it's going to be a different take on than what you have, because we all have a different exposure to different things and had access to different points of views and tools and adaptive technology and things like that. But yeah, I think generationally, I think the younger generation, you know, like Gen Z, I think they're just used to content. Unfortunately, I'm kind of happy that I grew up in a time where, like before, like iPhones were a thing. You know, I had a flip phone in high school and most of college even. And so it's like I kind of distinguish myself, but like the younger generation, they grew up with Instagram since they were in middle school. So I think they're just like naturally inclined to like go that route. So I know I have to separate those two things. But I do worry that younger people with disabilities or eye conditions are going to feel like that's their best shot at success is content, and then they're gonna they're gonna put all their eggs in that basket versus like do a job like what you do or become a school teacher.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever it is, just like take on like a quote unquote classic, just a job, you know. You know, they're gonna be like, well, I just, you know, name somebody, you know, I'll be like, oh, Molly Burke's famous, I'll be famous too, you know, that type of thing. So and I guess everyone, you know, it depends. Like if you have if you're really creative and you really want to dive into it and that's your passion, but I think some people think that's like their only way to success, or I don't know, it's like somehow like it seems like the influencer space in the disability world has kind of became like that. But yeah, I think people overlook the people with just regular jobs, and because those people aren't posting, and I think they get overlooked. And you only hear what is the phrase, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil or something like that, you know?
I like that.
So it's like, yeah. So I mean, there's a whole demographic not really being, you know, portrayed online, and I think that what's interesting about you is that you're a part of that demographic, but you also make content. So you're kind of like the outlier of that.
Yeah, I try. I mean, I hope I will always make content. I mean, I enjoy making content.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy filming things. I enjoy, you know, I make a lot of content for myself, you know.
Yeah.
Videos of the dog, memories of doing whatever we're doing. And I've always been into that. And also, I'm very aware that there'll come a day when I cannot see any content, and I'm trying to sort of like consume as much as I can, and be a part of as much as I can while I still have some usable vision in my left eye. Because when I can no longer consume video or visual content, that'll be that's going to happen, isn't it? But it's and I sort of set out to make content. My original plan was I wanted to inspire an 18-year-old version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was 18, it was a very different world. Facebook hadn't been invented. YouTube hadn't been invented. So, when I was going through, it sounds crazy when I say that, but, there wasn't a low vision community.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone else at RP. There had never been a YouTube video. There'd never been a TikTok. There'd never been a reel. None of that existed. It was yet to be invented. And I guess now I try and make content that is inspirational. That is, showing people that you can have a good life. You can be productive. You can travel. You can have a good job. You can be a leader in a corporation and lead teams and do all that stuff. But I realised that I'm not inspirational.
Why do you say that?
Because if it's all about perspective and where you are on your journey, and if you're really struggling and you're in a dark place because you're depressed and you're just really struggling with the psychological effects of going blind or losing your vision or whatever you're in, and then you see someone like me jumping out of a plane over Dubai and rattling on about how I lead my dead successful team, that's so far away and seems so unattainable. I've been told by a couple of people it has the opposite effect. It's actually a demotivator rather than a motivator. It's actually a big turn off for a lot of people. And I thought, wow, that's quite interesting feedback that some of my friends have given me. They've said, it's too far. You're fishing in the wrong pond. That is not going to inspire someone that's down and out. Seeing somebody at the top of their game doing really, really well doesn't necessarily always inspire somebody.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, but it was a good truth that somebody told me.
Well, yeah, there's two approaches. There's tough love, and then there's a soft way of being and telling someone something. And I would say you lean more towards the tough love type of approach to just how you carry yourself in your content. And I think for some people it's going to work. I think some people will find it inspirational. And I think some people are going to be like, I don't like how he said that. And you need to be softer for those people. And I think there's different creators for those people. But if I were to give you advice, I would say you just got to keep doing your thing, because everyone, I would say for the most part, people play it soft on online because it's safer, and no one wants to hurt anyone's feelings either. No one wants who wants to make someone feel bad. So it's like, but yeah, I think just keeping it real, and showing you do things, while it might demotivate some people, it might motivate others. And that's, to me, if you want me to just be frank, I would say that's their problem if it demotivates them. It's like, oh, I can't do that. And it's like, all right, well, of course you can't with that type of thinking. So I mean, I don't know. So, sometimes I get caught between the two because I take a more soft approach. But sometimes I'll see something online and it will, to use a buzzword, it'll trigger me. I'll be like, oh, really? And then I can kind of get this irritability. I feel this irritability come over me, and I'm like, someone just needs to tell that person man up or whatever. It's like so that person's getting too babied. And I think there's a difference between being babied and being like, please, I need help, I need attention, and just kind of being advocating for accessibility and advocating for, hey, here's how I work my job, here's what I need to work my job. There's a difference between being babied and all that. And I sometimes when things are too soft, it really bothers me. because it's like I don't know. I just don't have the patience for it, I guess, because I'm like, wow, it's like when people are too soft about things, it's like you can't handle anything. Like it makes me lose hope for them altogether. If I feel like they're too soft.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, like I said before, people have got to go on their own journey, haven't they? And, I'm not saying this has always been super easy. We don't have a lot of choice in this, the game of RP. It's not a lifestyle choice, is it? It's happening to you, whether you like it or not. And I'm totally up for helping anybody, and I do have people that reach out to me, and I've mentored people going for interviews, and people have sent me nice messages about my content, and that's, that's really, really good. But then across the community, there's a lot of people that are in a bad place, I think, in terms of a lot of people like to be in the victim, the victim sort of mentality, don't they? They like to be in that what's the word? Popular term for it, in the pity party sort of.
Yeah. And I think that's fine. I think everyone has that phase. I think everyone has a phase of being, but you just can't stay in that. It's sometimes when I feel like someone's in that phase for too long is when I start to be like, all right, time to, like, are you just gonna? Is it permanent? Is it a permanent phase for you? Because that's not helpful.
It's a natural phase to go into, and it's probably a phase that you'll go back to many times over your sight loss journey. But like you say, some people never leave that. I mean, I know people that are in the pity party sort of phase permanently, and they've got not a single disability, nothing wrong with them. Fully sighted,
you don't
disabled.
even need it.
It's not specific to the low vision community. Some people are just in that.
But I think for some people, it's a convenient scapegoat. Maybe those people would naturally be that way regardless, and then I have RP, so now I'm just gonna everything about my life, I'm just gonna put it and pin it on that.
Yeah.
When maybe it's just your personality. Maybe even without RP, you just wouldn't have what it takes to do anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Just to be blunt, just to be blunt, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Some people are more talented than others. Some people are more gifted than others. Some people are smarter than others. Some people are more athletic than others. You have to accept, that there's a diversity of people. And some people have it, some people don't. And that's just the way it is. And maybe people just don't have it. And I don't know. That sounds mean, but I just get tired of, I think the disability community gets babied too much.
What triggers me is the can't do attitude and the victim attitude. You know what I mean? That's what gets me. It's not the softness. It's just the. Well,
that's what I describe as soft. That's when I say soft.
Unwilling to try. I like all the people that say I can't get a job because I'm legally blind.
Okay.
And I'm calling bullshit on that straight away.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when I say soft, that's what I mean. It's more of like, not just soft, I'm not saying if you're soft, I don't like you, because softness could mean you're empathetic. Softness could mean you're nice and you're caring and you're a sweet person. And I think those are good qualities. Yeah. Those are great qualities. What I'm talking about with softness, what irritates me is the permanent pity party. Nothing's gonna go my way, and I can't do this, I can't do that, and this and this and this, and then you'll teach them how to maybe possibly alter and maybe reclaim some independence back. And it's like, I don't want to learn how to use this application. I don't want to learn how to use the white cane or whatever it is. And it's like, all right, well, you are at that point, you're choosing to stay stagnant.
Yeah.
And it's at the point that I learned that you're choosing to stay in that phase is where I lose all patience, and I'm like, all right, I'm not helping you anymore.
Yeah. I guess some people are lucky if I economically, and from my background, I don't really have those options to to take that route. You know what I mean? It's on me to provide. It's on me to earn money. I don't have those backup plans that other people might have. You know, I don't have those luxuries. It's me or nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're the sole provider, right?
Well, no, you know, my wife does have a chronic illness, and she does work part time. But obviously, it's me that pays all the bills.
Yeah. Okay, well let's switch to that, because I think I got off topic there. I went on a rant about, you know, people being soft, but yeah, I guess my point is, if you're listening, and you know, there's a quote I like because it's simple. It's like, nothing changes if nothing changes, and it you know.
I thought you was going to go Winston Churchill then and go, if you think you can or can't, you will be right.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. But yeah, nothing changes if nothing changes. And if you're doing the same old thing over and over again, and you're always feeling down, maybe you should try something else. Maybe you should dig a little deeper. You know, if you know, like the last thing I'll do before we talk about, you know, your wife is I recently taught my mom how to use Instacart, which is like grocery delivery. And because she always would complain, she'd be like, no one will take me to the grocery store, and I need groceries. And I'm like, Instacart, it exists. It's an app you download, and it delivers groceries to your front door. So the last time I was, you know, in North Carolina visiting my mom, I got Instacart on her phone.
Nice.
And we did like a delivery. So I wanted her to see how easy it is. And now she's been using Instacart.
Nice.
So I'm like, it's little stuff, little wins like that. It's like, be a problem solver is all I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, if you have a problem, don't just sit there and be like, oh, I have this problem, there's nothing I can do about it. All right, what? Try to find some sort of solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I mean. Some people just don't even look for the solution, and then they just keep restating their problem again. And I guess that's what I'm saying I take issue with. It's like, I need some sort of action. I need to see some sort of action.
Yeah.
After a while, I just lose hope. I'm like, all right, well, you know, I need to see
the
some
funny
action.
thing is, the people in that phase, they don't know they're in that phase. So
Yeah.
I don't know how long I was like that, or if
Yeah.
I was like that. You don't really see it when you're the one in it.
Yeah.
It's only eventually when you get out of that phase. It's tough, innit? I mean, this whole thing, losing your vision.
And also,
tough.
let me add that I'm not even legally blind, so who am I to even say? I'll probably have the same exact phase, but I just haven't been there yet. So we'll see. I'm talking a big game, but we'll see. But going, you know, you travel a lot, and you know, you always bring your ride or die with you. And you mentioned she has basically a chronic condition that's very serious. Let's talk about that, because that's unique, because you have RP.
Well, this starts to feed into why I've got this sort of hardened mentality, and people watching this are thinking, "Oh my God, he's awful. This guy, he's just got no compassion whatsoever." This will be a little insight into me. So, I mean, I guess we'll circle back to RP, but obviously, no one ever told me that I had RP, and I didn't know, and my family told the ophthalmologist never to tell me. And eventually I found out when I was about 18, 19, when I started having symptoms.
That's something that you've told me before that I've always wanted to talk to you about and never had the chance.
We'll circle back to that in a second. Remind me, we'll come back to that when we talk about the wife. So when I met Anna, you know, you probably went through this with Natalie, but when you've got RP, and you meet somebody, it's like, when should I tell them that I've got RP? It's probably not a first date conversation, might not be a second date conversation, but you know, I'm gonna have to tell this person at some point that I'm going blind. It's a really big thing to tell somebody. And I can remember when Anna and I had been dating for a little while, and I was starting to think to myself, right, this is looking like we're going from dating into actually becoming boyfriend and girlfriend, and it's probably time that we have the talk, and I'm going to have to, let her know. And obviously it's pretty early on in the relationship, but it's getting to the point where if we're going to go on a date and it's night time, I'm going to need you to help, because I can't see I can't see in the dark at that time. Wasn't a cane user, and it was really interesting because we sort of said, look, I'm gonna have to tell you something now. I've got this thing. It's called retinitis pigmentosa, and essentially that means I'll be legally blind by the time I'm in my 40s probably. And I was sort of waiting with bated breath to see what she's going to think about that. Is she up for that? Knowing that if I'm going to be the person that she goes on to live a life with and eventually marry one day, that she's potentially going to be married to a blind guy, or is it time to tap out now and call it quits? Just gotta get out there, haven't you, and just call it at the beginning. So I'm building up for this conversation, and I told her, and she's like, okay, well, since we're sharing, I've got one of my own. Okay, what's yours? She's like, well, I've got this thing called cystic fibrosis, and I have a shortened life expectancy. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going blind. She's got a reduced life expectancy. Interesting. Let's look into this. So I remember looking into cystic fibrosis and found out life expectancy was 32. We're having this conversation. She's 18, and I'm thinking, wow, she's got a life expectancy of 32. I've got a sight expectancy of maybe mid 30s, late 40s. So I was like, wow, I'm going blind. And I used to think going blind was a big deal until that second. Once she told me that, all of a sudden that kind of dwarfed my little RP problem of having bad vision and eventually losing my vision. So that was a really interesting thing to approach together. And what's kind of beautiful about that is that really quite quickly shaped how we wanted our lives to be. So very quickly we worked out we're probably not going to have children. Well, we're definitely not going to have children, because the survival rate for Anna to even have a child would be terrible, and the reduction in lifespan would be that. Also, we'd potentially be producing a child that would have cystic fibrosis and retinitis pigmentosa. So very quickly we worked out that wasn't for us, wasn't what we were going to do. Then we got to thinking, well, what's our life going to be like? What do we want our life to be like? Do we want to be in the corporate rat race and working 80 hours a week and spending all of our time worrying about the weenus and flogging ourselves in offices and spending all of our money on kitchen countertops and nice drapes and all that? And we were like, no, that's not really for us. So we need to earn enough money to fund a great life, and not a dollar more. And something my dad always said to me when I was young, when I dropped out of college at a very young age. In fact, I moved out when I was 16, had a number of jobs, and I dropped out of college. And I remember telling my parents that I was dropping out of college, and I was a bit worried about telling my dad. And my dad said to me, I'll only be disappointed if you waste your life building an expensive prison to live in. And it took me a few years to really work out what he meant by that, but I get it now, because I've got friends that have spent the last 10 years building expensive prisons to live in that they never leave, because they're mortgaged and financed and debted beyond belief with loads of stuff they probably don't really need. So that shaped our future, that shaped our life, and we very quickly set about, right, we'll have a summer holiday in Greece every year, and we'll have a winter holiday backpacking around Asia every year, and that's what we'll do now every year while we're young. And our first few holidays were to Greece, various different islands. That was like our summer holiday for 2 weeks, and then our big holiday for the year was always in the winter time, and that was always backpacking around Thailand or Malaysia or Cambodia or somewhere like that. And looking back, I mean, it's crazy when I think of it, because like Anna's parents were not really that chuffed about me taking their 19-year-old daughter backpacking around Thailand and island hopping with no fixed like itinerary, not sure what the standard of accommodation would be like, and also being accountable for Anna's medication, some of which has to be kept refrigerated, logistically tricky. There's equipment, nebulizers, all kinds of stuff that we would need to take, and having all of that in a backpack. But our attitude was, well, let's just do this. We can make this work. And really funny story. The first time we went backpacking, Anna's backpack had bikinis, flip-flops, nice clothes. My backpack had like 2 t-shirts, 1 pair of shorts, and all of Anna's medical equipment and medication. And that was the deal, right? And I was cool with that. And I always remember one of the very first islands we stayed on. We found this little island in Southeast Asia in Thailand, and wasn't many places to stay, but you walk up and down the beach and you find a nice little bungalow or villa on the beach to stay at. And we negotiated a price for a room, and we just said, look, we've got some medication that needs to be refrigerated. There's no fridge in this little beach villa type thing. If you've got somewhere you can keep this medication refrigerated, because if you don't, we're gonna have to stay somewhere else, because it's vital that we have a fridge to keep this medication cold. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll put it in the restaurant. There's refrigerators there where we keep the food cold. So, oh, brilliant. Anyway, we went to our rooms, dumped our backpacks, got shower changed, went out for dinner that night, went into the restaurant, had a lovely meal. And then when it came to order the dessert, they were like, you have to come up to the counter to order the desserts because they're in this glass cabinet. So we were like, oh, okay, brilliant. We walked up to this glass cabinet, and it had like a turnstile inside with all the the cakes and all the nice desserts spinning round. And on one of the tiers of this glass container thing was Anna's medication with room number J19 wrote on it, spinning round in there with all the cakes. I've never forgot that. It was a really just a funny moment. But I guess we've continued on with that way of life ever since. We're all about having fun, spending our time, making sure we're having a great life. And since then, the advances in technology and medication have drastically improved the quality of life for people with cystic fibrosis. It's no longer classed as a terminal chronic illness.
Okay.
They're going to start, this, I think we're just starting to see the first ever grandparents with cystic fibrosis. People are now living into their 60s with cystic fibrosis, which is amazing. I mean, that was, unthinkable when Anna and I got together.
Wow. No, that's incredible. I think on the See-Through podcast, I interview people with not just vision loss, but, other disabilities. So this is the first time hearing a story about, blindness, mingling with other disabilities and how they both teach each other something. Like I'm sure your RP taught Anna some things, and then Anna's cystic fibrosis taught you a lot of things.
Oh, for
and
sure.
And it probably made you bond in a way. You had this kind of shared struggle, that you kind of bonded over.
Well, it's kind of good because we're a bit of a team. So, we help each other out. She's got physical issues and I have vision issues. So together we managed to live a great life, but independently it would be, it would be a lot harder.
Yeah, and what kind of issues come along with cystic fibrosis?
Well, to put it in a nutshell, cystic fibrosis is a genetic mutation, and the main issue is that the body produces this like thick, sticky mucus that fills up inside your lungs and on other organs as well. So the primary issue typically is that your lungs fill up with this green sticky mucus, which you can't get out of your lungs, which therefore massively reduces your lung function and your ability to breathe. And as you get older, it fills up more and more and more and more and more until eventually you can't breathe. And along that journey, certain bugs and bacteria colonize, so you end up with a permanent chest infection. It's like having, COVID-19, but permanently. And then getting COVID-20, COVID-21, COVID-22. And as you get more and more of these bugs and they start to colonize, you can't get them out, and they become immune to the drugs and the treatment. So it really weakens your immune system. that's just one aspect of it.
Yeah.
The other aspect is because all of your organs get covered in this mucus, it means like typically people will have no ability to digest their own food. So Anna, as well as having the lung complications, because her pancreas is covered in this mucus, she can't digest her own food. So when we're out for dinner, she has to look at a meal and work out what's in it and then decide how many enzymes to take manually to digest that meal. So this is that. And then also, because of the same issue, she has to inject insulin.
Okay.
So you get cystic fibrosis related diabetes, you get the inability to digest your own food, you get the predominantly the main issue is your lungs and breathing capacity, and then on top of that all the medication then has complications and side effects like arthritis and osteopenia and stuff like that. So quite a complicated illness, really.
No, it sounds complicated, but thank God for the changes. The medication, because you mentioned 32 was the life expectancy, and
Yep.
How old is Anna now?
Anna is 42.
Yeah, so already 10 years past that, and also another thing that I noticed is not only do you both travel a lot, but you also work out together and you do CrossFit together. And I meant you mentioned that in the past too, that how that's helped her with her strength.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Really, really, very much so. I think having a lung condition, doing exercise is a great way of clearing that mucus from the lungs.
Yeah.
And if imagine if we could do exercises to strengthen our eyes or boost our eyesight, we would totally be doing that. Whereas Anna can do that. If she does cardiovascular activity, she can expand and increase her VO2 max, her lung capacity, muscle wastage that she gets from a lot of the treatments and medications. She can lift weights and regrow muscle. And it's been a huge help doing CrossFit because weight-bearing exercise increases your bone density, and she takes medication that thins the bones.
Sure.
So doing weight-bearing activity, which then offsets that, is just phenomenal. I strongly believe Anna wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her dedication to fitness, strength training, and being very vigilant with her medication and her healthcare routines.
Mm-hmm. Well, then that goes back to my point about people who are too soft. Sometimes it's like if you were too soft, you wouldn't be like, I don't want to do CrossFit. That seems hard. All right, well, now your body's going to face the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes you just have to grind and, to really push yourself to really max out, your potential, and I think Anna's a perfect example of that, of someone who is using modern science and medicine as well as the tried and true ways of fitness to kind of dual up and maximize her health, Again, that's taking a proactive approach.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to motivation, doesn't it? If you want to have a great life, if you want to go and hike up a mountain in Malaysia and go and see what it looks like from the top of that mountain and do great things, or, put yourself through long, tiring flights, across international, waters and stuff, being as fit and healthy as you can, just creates opportunity. And the same for me. I could easily just say, well, I've lost 90% of my vision. I'm down to 10% in my left eye. I'm not going to work now. I'm just going to be on benefits and just coast and get my disability check each month. But that wouldn't enable me to have the life that I have. That wouldn't enable me to take my wife for lunch in Switzerland.
Yeah, and you'd probably lose a lot of your spark. You'd lose a lot of your pep in your step. And I think it would affect your marriage too, because then Anna's seeing you in a kind of defeated state, and then there's layers to the consequences of not trying.
100%. It's amazing if you are positive and you just do your best and you put yourself out there. It's amazing what you get back from. I mean, whatever job you could get, right? Doesn't matter what the job is, any job. The big benefit of any job is a network. That's the major benefit that I see. And when I'm talking to blind and low vision people online and they're saying, well, I've not got the skills, I've not got this, my advice to most blind people or low vision people is just get any job. Get any job you can get. Because the first benefit is you've now got teammates, workmates, a manager. You're going to get invited to retirement parties, baby showers. You just grow that bit of a network. You're cultivating relationships, and that's a big part of your life. That's better than just being at home playing on the PlayStation all day and isolating yourself, because once you become isolated, your opportunities start to shrink. And it's amazing how opportunities can shrink versus if you put yourself out there in the world and open yourself up to random opportunities and just say yes to more things than you say no to. It's amazing how so many doors start to open, and you can't even imagine what the possibilities are.
Yeah. You got to put yourself out there.
Totally.
And you might be surprised at what happens. Again, nothing changes if nothing changes. I think that quote all the time just because it's so simple. What did Anna think about your RP? Having cystic fibrosis. What's her perspective on your eye disease?
It's kind of funny. I think she thought it was a really big deal and quite scary and quite upsetting for me. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like we're in a bit of a contest. I'm like, no, yours is worse than mine. And she's like, oh, no. I'd much rather have all of this CF stuff than lose my vision. So it's kind of funny. Like, I think hers is way worse than RP. And she's like, well, I'd rather have mine than RP. So it's kind of funny how we both think the other one has got it worse.
Yeah,
balances us out perfectly.
Well, it's like there's a mutual respect there. It sounds like where it's like I salute you for how you live with your condition, and then she's like, I salute you for how you live with your condition.
100%. She's like, I could not cope with not being able to drive. I just don't know how I would get on without, the car and being able to drive. And
yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think that's always the one, right? that gets people.
Yeah,
not being able to drive.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in freedom that you lose without that option, Yeah. But for example, yourself, you have Anna, so now you kind of have access to a car.
Yep.
But now you have to navigate. How often do I ask for a ride somewhere, or should I feel guilty for needing a ride, and I think if you find
it's my car, so there's no guilt whatsoever.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. But no, that's awesome, man. But yeah, it sounds like you guys are a perfect fit, and I can see that, with the stuff you post online, and I think that's awesome. I think you hit the jackpot, with Anna, and you guys seem like a perfect fit. I was going to ask you, it's kind of a deep question, but in terms of deciding not to have children, I'm sure that was an easy choice to make, but a hard mental process after the decision's been made.
Yeah, tough. I think, to be direct and brutal, I would have loved to have been a dad and had kids and done all that stuff. That would have been awesome. I am aware of what I'm missing out on there, acutely aware of that. But at the same time, I'm more than at peace with it, because I come from a humble background where a lot of my friends had kids when we were teenagers. Most of my friends now, my proper inner circle, my inner crew of guys, they're granddads now.
Wow.
Most of my friends have been grandparents since they were, in their 40s. It's the area we grew up in. That was the lifestyle. And I've seen my one of my friends is getting remarried this year, and I'm his best man at his wedding, and he has had a baby since we were 19.
Just always had a baby.
He's always had a baby, So he's now got kids that have got babies, but he's also got a baby. So he's got like...
He's just got those fertile swimmers, huh?
He's got good swimmers. He's got Olympic swimmers, yeah. So he's got, he's got kids that are in their 30s, and he's got kids that are under 5.
Wow.
So as much as I would like to have done all of that, he's never been able to come on any of our trips that we've done. And again, me and the guys, we go on a lot of trips. I go on holiday with Anna, but I've got a good group of friends that I go on holiday with. I always have at least 1 or 2 lads trips a year to a foreign land, international trip with the boys, just doing something fun, like usually involving water. We like to do a lot of canoeing or kayaking or paddleboarding, or sometimes just go on drinking holidays to nightclubs or whatever. And he's never been able to do that because he's always had a baby the whole time, or children to pay for, school to pay for. They come at a huge cost, don't they? And myself and Anna, we have both got an income, so we're double income, no kids, or DINKS as the acronym goes. DINKS, DINKS, double income, no kids. So I guess it was in another life that would have been great, and I would have been happy being a father. But also, I'm happy in this life, getting to travel the world, do what I want when I want, and have an awesome time whilst doing it. So I'm more than at peace with our decisions.
I'll say I'm glad you have peace around that, because I think that's something that comes with time and just kind of wrapping your mind around it.
Well, this is a good segue back to my parents, isn't it? And decisions they made.
So let's talk about your parents' decision to not tell you. Yeah. Literally, they never told you. You found out you had RP on your own, even though they knew the whole time.
Well, not only did they not tell me, they also forced everybody else not to tell me.
Yeah.
So that's the first part.
Well, let me just ask you right out the gate. Are you appreciative of that approach, or do you wish they told you?
No, I am appreciative of that approach. I think it was a very ballsy decision of my parents not to tell me, and I think it's paid off. I think it was a great decision.
Okay.
I honestly believe I wouldn't have the killer instinct that I've got today. I wouldn't be as successful as I am today if they hadn't taken that decision.
So you think there's like a little bit of ignorance is bliss kind of thing, like not knowing, you just kind of lived according to no really timeline, whereas if you knew, you might give yourself a timeline on things?
Yeah, I think my parents' logic for not telling me and making sure I never found out was that they didn't want me to have any limiting beliefs. They didn't want me to have any remote inkling of, well, I'm not going to do this because I might be blind one day. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to be blind one day. Or I'll just play this bit safe because, I'm going to start losing my vision soon. They didn't want any of that. They wanted me to get out in the world, have a great life, and give me... Again, we come from humble backgrounds, right? Not much money in what we call a council estate, which you'd call sort of, I guess, social housing.
Yeah.
And you've got to be tough in this world to make it, haven't you? And you can't be tough if you doubt yourself and you've got limiting beliefs. You need to be all over it if you want to get anywhere in this world. So I think that was their mentality of not telling me. And it's funny because they must have had a watchful eye on me the whole time, looking for signs, looking for, like you talked about earlier about you and your brother walking along and hitting that fishing pole. I must have done lots of stuff like that and just put it down to clumsiness because I didn't know. And my mum and dad must have been, giving each other the eyebrows to say, "Oh, is it starting? Is it starting?" But again, the whole family was on lock not to tell me. The ophthalmologist, everyone was, not to tell me.
No, that's unique because I think, for example, I want to have kids, so it's like if I find out through genetic testing that my kid has RP, now I'm in the same position your parents were in. Oof. So it's like, all right, so what call am I going to make, and that's something I'll have to come to terms with and figure out if it comes down to that. But have your parents ever talked to you about their logic behind it? Like what? Like did they go back and forth, or was it a pretty easy choice for them? Or
I've never had that conversation. I perhaps should one time. That would make for great content. You could even have them on and ask them. No. I remember the day, right? So I was at college. I had driven there on a motorcycle, and I'd been experiencing some difficulties with my vision. I'd started to become aware that I had trouble in low light conditions and darkness and at night time.
Yeah.
And at this age, I was around about 18 in college. Just started going out to bars and pubs and clubs, because obviously you can drink here at 18.
And at that age, you feel invincible too.
Oh yeah. So, I started going in. I probably started sneaking into pubs around 16, 17, like everyone does over here. And then, as soon as you're at college, 18 years of age, everyone on a Friday night is out in the same nightclub, big, huge nightclub, massive dance floor. And that's where I started to notice that I couldn't see as well as my friends, because it was really dark, lasers flashing everywhere, flashing lights, total RP nightmare. And obviously back then, at 18, my RP wasn't that bad. I mean, I was driving a motorcycle. But I just kept having accidents and, tripping over and spilling my drinks. And I'd say to my friends, it's really dark in here. And they would say to me, it's reasonably dark, but it's not that dark. You should still be able to see those stairs or that bouncer that you've just walked into. You know what I mean? It was like really strange. So then I just one day on my lunch break from college, which wasn't too far from the ophthalmologists, I just took myself in there one day, no appointment, just walked in and just said, can I see an optician? And they were like, yeah. So what's the problem? So I'm having a lot of trouble with my night vision. I just wondered if you could do some tests or check, because I'm just really struggling at night time, particularly in bars and nightclubs where these flashing lights seem to not be able to adjust. And I'd also started tripping over wet floor signs. So this is where that whole thing comes from. And I remember saying to the ophthalmologist, I feel like I'm too tall for my eyes. Like my eyes need resetting or something. Like I can't see things low down. Sometimes, not all the time.
I see. That's a cool way to describe it. You're too tall for your eyes.
At the circus when you see someone on them huge stilts.
Yeah.
I felt like that, because I felt like I could see perfectly. I got colour vision. I could see everything. But if something is really low down at feet level, I don't see it. It's like I'm too tall for my eyes.
Yeah.
And I explained this to the ophthalmologist. I said, does that make any sense? And they had a look at my eyes and all the rest of it, and then I looked at the file, and they came back in and they just went, well, yeah, you're going blind. You've got RP, so it's just a run-of-the-mill symptom that you're going to experience as you continue to lose your vision. And I was like, excuse me, until I what now? Lose my vision?
Yeah. And
they were like, yeah, you've got RP. You were diagnosed like when you were 3. Like it's all here in your notes. And I was like, no one told me. And so that was how I found out. It was just a brutal, mega shock. Was not expecting that on my lunch break from college. And I remember coming out of that office and walking through the it was in like a shopping mall area, this particular ophthalmologist, and I came out, walked through there, and I remember trying to hold back the tears, because I was like quite upset at the time, and I was thinking, right, come on, can't be walking through the town now with tears trickling down your cheeks. But it was an absolute sucker punch. Just it was like my life flashed before my eyes. I've just been told you're going blind in a very frank, no bedside manner sort of style. And I'm at college thinking, wow, what am I going to do now? I was going to go off and I was going to go to university. I was going to do computer science and have this great career and have a great life and go and travel the world. And now I can't do any of that. I was like, oh, wow, what the hell? And I literally went home that day and confronted my parents and was like, I've just been to the opticians. They've told me this. I've got this thing called retinitis. Couldn't even say it. Reti pigment something or other I've got.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you've got it. You've got a cousin that's got it. And and it's X-linked RP. It can only be passed from, well, what my parents told me, which is very, very rare. It can only be passed from a woman to a child. So your father can't carry it, only your mother can carry it. She could pass it on to me, but I can't pass it on because it's on the X chromosome, and it sort of dies with me, and it only affects men. And that's what I thought. And then obviously, as I become more educated, I find out that actually RP is a spectrum, and there's like 800 different kinds of retinitis pigmentosa. It's a whole spectrum of different varied genetic mutations that are just called pigmentosa, essentially. So over the years I started to learn a little bit more about it, but their rationale when I asked them was, well, we didn't want you to grow up with any limiting beliefs, and we didn't want you to sort of curtail any of your dreams and aspirations. And luckily, I think by the time I was 18, going on 19, you're not fully formed, but your character and your personality is now sort of cemented, isn't it? And
it starts to solidify at that age. You come into yourself,
yeah. So that's put me on a good trajectory, I think, and has given me that sort of I don't have, even now I don't have limiting beliefs. I never approach things thinking, oh, I can't do that because I'm blind, or because I'm low vision, or if anything, I'm sort of on the other side of the fence looking back thinking, right, will they let me do that with me being like this, or do I have to lie? So I'm always in this situation of and my friends love this, well, some of them love it, some of them hate it. I always have this thing of, do I ask for permission or forgiveness? And sometimes
that is how you are.
But that is how I am. Do I ask for forgiveness or for permission? Because sometimes when I ask for permission, it gets denied. Oh, you can't do that. It's too dangerous. And I'm like, okay, damn it, shouldn't have asked. Whereas I'm better to do it and then tell them, by the way, I can't see after the fact. And then if you get in trouble for doing it, then c'est la vie.
Have your parents mentioned it to you, if they're like proud of you and how you've adapted to RP? Like, do they ever share any thoughts about the type of man you kind of grew into with your RP? Have they ever talked about that? Or do they keep it separate? Or is it just you're their son and they talk to you like, how do they approach it now?
Yeah, I think they just see it as a separate thing. I don't think they themselves, I think because of how I am like I am, they're probably a little bit blind to how tough RP can be, and I think they would be surprised to meet other people in the RP community that have perhaps not got my attitude, that have perhaps decided to stop working at 20, 25 because they've got RP. I think that would confuse them because they're just looking at myself and my cousin. My cousin who has RP on my mum's side, he's to this day still working, and he's got even less vision than me, and he's approaching retirement age. So for my parents to see somebody, a young person tap out and say, well, I can't work because I'm low vision, I think that would confuse my parents, because I don't think they really separate it. I don't think they think it's that big of a deal. In many ways, I've probably done it a disservice because I've probably made having RP look easier than what it actually is.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that too, because when you've stayed at my apartment and we go out into the city, it's like you're working hard with that cane, dude. It's like it hurts
if you don't.
Yeah. So like from my perspective, I'm like, man, that using the cane seems difficult. It seems mentally taxing. It seems like a whole nother layer to life, but you always it never seems to faze you. I have noticed that it doesn't seem to weigh you down at all. Where I don't think I've ever heard you be like, fuck this cane, I'm tired of using it.
No,
I've never heard that, or like I never heard you be frustrated, I guess.
No, because it's funny because when I was in the pre-cane phase, I really struggled. Like, I walked slower. I spent a lot of time looking at the ground.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was thinking a bit like you. I was like, well, I don't really need a cane because I can still see. I feel like I'm too sighted to use a cane. And that was a lot of hard work. That was very taxing. Trying to be fully sighted when you're not, and you know, like in a work context. Let's say you go for a business meeting and you walk into a boardroom, whereas everyone else in that board meeting, they might be stressed out about the agenda, the topics, the negotiation, the politics of what we're about to discuss. I would be anxious about, am I going to be able to find the empty seat in this office?
Yeah.
Am I going to trip?
Different things.
Am I going to trip over the cord that's coming from the projector to the laptop? You know, that was my anxiousness, because I'm walking in there without a cane, mostly sighted but not fully sighted, and, you know, at risk of looking daft, looking stupid, tripping over something, knocking a coffee over in the middle of a fancy meeting room. And then when I actually started using my cane, it was like a weight got lifted off me. I became so much more sighted when I started using my cane, because I stopped looking at the floor, I stopped looking at the ground, I stopped trying to look and identify obstacles, and I just started using a cane, and then looked at people, or looked at the view, or looked at the signs, or whatever. It was all of a sudden like I became expert. It was like getting my sight back, because I just give up looking at the ground. I give up looking for curbs, posts, obstacles, tripping hazards, because I just thought, well, that's what the cane's for. So instead of looking at the floor, I'm now going to look at the Statue of Liberty, or I'm going to look at the Eiffel Tower, or whatever it is that I'm walking past. It was like a superpower. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. You know what just clicked with me is, like, I thought the reason me even asking you that was because since I don't use a cane, whenever I was doing cane training or have tinkered around with the white cane, it seems difficult because I normally don't use it. And but at a certain point, when the normal is using the cane, not using it becomes the difficult. Right? Is that what it seems like? It seems like
100%.
The two worlds flip. So now it'd be like if you had to navigate without the cane, you would be frustrated. You'd be like, I don't have my cane. This is terrible. And then, but now for me, it's like, I don't want to use the cane. This is a nuisance to me. I'd rather just walk.
Yep.
But at a certain point, the worlds flip, and then it's like without the cane is frustrating.
Yeah, 100%. It's
interesting.
You know, in my mind, it's like a third eye, or fourth eye, or fifth eye, whatever you want to call it. It's like an
third
additional
leg
sense. Third leg, yeah. No pun intended. But the it's you know, to that end, it has become if I'm walking around the city now, like when you and I have been out in Manhattan wandering around, I'm trying to be present in that moment and enjoy what I'm doing, not looking at the ground, not thinking, oh, am I going to bump into somebody? Am I going to trip over a hazard or anything like that? I'm you're trying to describe something to me. You're guiding me and saying, oh, Steve, if you look over there, can you see this? Can you see that? And I'm doing my best to be in that moment doing that and just not worrying about what I can and can't see. So, the cane, it was really liberating when I got to that stage, because you'll probably know, you go from the ID cane, which doesn't touch the floor. You're not using that for navigating. You're not using that for obstacle detection. You're using that to tell everyone else, hey, I've got a sight issue. Then you progress to a guide cane, usually a marshmallow or pencil tip. And again, that's just a 2-tap cane. You don't really need it to observe the terrain. That is just for obstacle detection. And then if you progress even more and you progress to having a long cane with a ball on the end, this is at the stage now where you're in constant contact with the ground because you're trying to feel the terrain, because now you can't even tell if it's an incline, a decline, uneven terrain. And as you progress through that, it's just so liberating just to be unburdened from it and not have to concentrate anymore. You're probably working so much harder walking through Manhattan than I am.
That's wild. I don't know if that's true, but I'll entertain the idea.
Well, maybe at nighttime. Let's say nighttime, Times Square, me and you walking along. I'm thinking you're working harder than me. Or let's say you were going to the edge, right? At the top of that massive building in Manhattan, and it's pitch black and there's flashing lights and there's metal detectors and there's a group of security guys there. Who's working harder in that scenario, you or me? Real life scenario, people.
No, I am for sure, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that because it became...
That was an RP nightmare.
Yeah, I was... For those listening, I took Steve to the edge in Manhattan, which is really cool. It's basically like an overlook. So you go up on this, you go up like 120 floors, I think, and then there's like they built this roof deck so you can have these really cool sights of Manhattan. But to get to the elevator to go to the roof, it's like this long black corridor, very darkly lit. It's intentionally lit that way. I mean, it's cool looking design, but not very accessible. And so I'm guiding, like, for example, to get to the edge, I'm guiding Steve. But then once we get to the long corridor, since Steve has the cane and I don't, it's almost like he was guiding me through the corridor. So it's just unique. But yeah.
But then when we rounded the corner, we had to go through the metal detectors. Yeah. Do you remember? And that's where it was interesting because the attendants could see me and my cane and assisted me, but no one really assisted you.
Yeah. No one never does. And everyone's always confused as to why I'm like moving at a snail's pace. And yeah.
But going back to your question, I think that attitude and that the thought process from my parents not telling me, I think that's why I have this. I mean, maybe I come across arrogant sometimes with it because I'm maybe a bit too confident or too blasé about it, but I'm just, in my mind, I can totally do it until proved otherwise. You know what I mean? So I've just adopted that mentality.
I just think that's so cool that to have that story about not knowing, because my mom has RP, so I guess I didn't connect the dots on that really until there's at a certain point when you're a kid, there's really no benefit knowing anyways. Even with a mom who had it, like it didn't really click with me until I was probably like 12 what that even meant, in terms of having a mom, like, and all I remember is like, she would have to drive us home from like baseball practice or like whatever little league sport we were doing, and at nighttime it would be like it was like, this was while she was still driving, she would get real nervous and like tense, and I could notice it, and we're like, all right, well, we got to get home in time because it's getting dark, we need to go. And then if it got too dark, I could sense like a nervousness in her, she would kind of freak out a little bit. But I give her total credit of strength for taking us to all our sports events and practices, and she did it all.
I mean, that's, and she worked her whole career right to the end as well. So I mean, it's a good, I in many ways she's probably made it, the condition, blind to you also, in terms of like she's made it look relatively easy, even though for her it probably wasn't easy, but she's not made it look impossible because she's still driven the car, she's still gone out to work every day, she's still done that. So you looking at and not using a cane as well, so you're probably thinking, well, this is no big deal, this RP thing isn't so bad.
Well, that's what I said. That's what I said whenever I found out. Like I remember telling my dad, I was like, because I was around, I think I was 14. I always tell the age of this, and it varies between 12, 13, or 14, but I was around that timeline. And I remember my dad asked me how I felt about it.
Oh, really?
When I got officially diagnosed, because they ran a bunch of tests and were able to actually pinpoint that I had it. And I was like, it's all right. It's like, I'll still be able to see something. That was like my response, because I was, analyzing my mom, because like, well, hey, my mom can still see. So it's not like I'm going, in my mind, it's not like I'm going blind.
Yeah.
It's like I'll still be able to see something. And then, obviously the older you get, the more mature you get, you realize how much is impacted by not being able to drive, and how career choices matter with vision and things like that. And the realities start to sink in. But in my mind, as long as I was able to still see, and I kind of still have that mentality, and my mentality is, as long as I'm able to see something, I'll be all right. And that's what it used to be. It used to be like, I want to retain as much as possible, and I still want to retain as much as possible. But in my mind, as long, like, for example, my mom is 67, and she can still, scroll Facebook on her phone. So I'm like, all right, sounds good to me.
So
that's
probably
a win
have
in my book.
You probably have a similar mentality to me then, because you're not seeing any real limits to RP, are you? From your mum being your role model, and she's had a good, productive life, worked right the way till retirement, and even now still got, a decent quality of life. So that's not really putting limits on you.
I learned more.
Good.
I learned more from her marriage, my mom and dad's marriage, than from my mom. Like, their marriage was, in my dad's perspective on how he interpreted RP, is what made it seem a big deal. Like, my dad wasn't the nicest about the RP. He would describe it as a burden and things like that, and would make my mom feel guilty if he had to drive her somewhere, and he just didn't really want to help much.
Right. Okay.
And so from that perspective,
have you picked up on that? Like, do you ever sometimes worry, am I going to be a burden because of that echo?
1,000%. 1,000%.
Interesting.
But it's like, I remember that messing with me, because I'd be like, well, I have RP, so that means when I grow up, I'm going to be a burden, according to my dad. And I don't think they ever put that together, or at least I don't know if my dad cared enough to. But it's so basically, growing up, I was like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that type of partnership where my wife makes me feel guilty about driving me places. But I'll even take it a step further. I'll just put myself in a position to where I don't have to even ask for a ride. And that's why I moved to New York City, basically. It's like, all right, I'll just remove cars from the equation completely.
Nice.
So fuck you if you don't want to give me a drive. I don't need a car anyways. That was kind of a big part of that, because I can't stand the idea of being like needing a ride or from somebody, or I can't stand the thought of that, because I saw how much that negatively impacted my mom, and if you get in with the wrong person, that's another big factor. Like you and Anna, right? Good fit, good team. Imagine if you were married to someone who made you feel like shit for having RP.
Well, I just wouldn't be. That's the thing.
I know.
You know what I mean?
And that's a whole nother story too. It's like, but that's just one element of it. But yeah, my mom did not, she just kind of put up with it. But from a kid's point of view with RP, you just see it and you're just like, oh gosh, I'm not going to fall into that trap. And that's another reason why I probably prematurely learned to use a cane, because my mom doesn't use a cane. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go down that path either. So it's like I removed cars from the equation. I learned a cane, because I'm like, to me, those are the two traps that my mom kind of fell into, and I don't blame her for it. It's a different time, different world. She had her reasons, 3 kids, but yeah, she did everything. She drove us, probably when she didn't feel safe to. And I give her tons of credit for that. And, my dad did not. When it comes to me as a dad, like, he never made me feel bad about my RP. he never made me feel bad about it, but what I witnessed with how he would treat my mom's RP is what made me feel bad about my RP. It was like just through relation to my mom, or you know, and I don't know if you ever put the pieces together that I was putting the pieces together. So it's very important if you're someone with a disability, like, or imagine if Anna met somebody who made her feel like shit for her having cystic fibrosis, or made her feel like a burden, like, oh, we got to take the medicine, we got to put it in the refrigerator, like, oh, I don't want, you know. So it's like, if you're someone with, you know, an eye condition or a disability of any kind, like, and you want to get married, or, you know, have a long-term partnership or whatever it is, you have to be very, very peculiar about who you end up being with. I mean, with or without a disability, it's probably the biggest decision you'll make is who you end up marrying or end up being with, because it's gonna impact your day-to-day, you know, your breakfast, your lunch and your dinner, your nighttime. It's every day. So it's like, pick wisely.
That is, I think, so important. You only get one shot at this life.
Yeah.
And you're a long time dead, as they say. And you've got to really control the narrative. You're not here for very long. You don't have any time. And you just need to play to win and just get in there and control the narrative. I mean, look at your situation. You identifying those traps that your mum fell into, and your environment, and you thinking, right, well, I need to change my environment into a central business district where there's public transport, there's Instacart, there is all the amenities, there's employment opportunities. You know, I imagine where your hometown being quite sort of countrified, and a car being absolutely crucial for you, you know, getting to and from work and stuff. But you took control of that situation and that environment to put yourself in a future-proof state, which is amazing. That's a very, you know, props to you, mate, for taking that, because you've done the preemptive strikes, haven't you? You are filling your toolbox for a great life.
Yeah, you can design the life you want, right? And you talked about it specifically. You and Anna sat down and said, this is how we're going to use our money. This is how we're going to use our holidays. This is how we're going to structure everything, because this is the specific life we want to live. And then you kind of connected the dots and figured out how much you needed to make to pull it off. And now you're living it. You know, the biggest part of that equation is you and Anna meeting, right? You both have total alignment.
Yep.
There's like, Anna's not like, no, I'm a homebody, let's just stay home. And then you're dragging her places, and then she's dragging you to stay home. No, you guys both on the same page. It's a good fit. It makes for a great fit. And I think a lot of times people settle for, you know, they're just like, if they have RP or a disability, they're like, oh, this person's into me, I better lock this down because nobody else will, or potentially no one else will. When you can be just as picky. In fact, you have the same rights as everyone else to be picky. You know, when it comes to being like, if you meet someone and they're throwing up red flags about how they would interpret your condition, immediately cut ties, in my opinion, because it's like, their colors are only going to show the further you get into it, and that alignment is completely necessary.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Life is very short. Change the person, change the location. It's a big world with 8 billion people in it. Life is short.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I you know, in terms of, we're all wired in a way, and if you dive deep and you ask people why they are a certain way, you can really figure it out. So for me, it's like asking you these questions. I'm learning, why is it that you have this, you know, more straightforward approach to RP? And, you know, we dive into your story. Makes total sense, right? You know, your parents didn't tell you. Your dad told you it should never restrict you from anything. You know, you meet Anna and she tells you she has a life limitation at 32. Kind of makes your RP feel small in that regard, because you're like, well, at least it's just my eyes. And I still have my other physical health. I still have everything else. And then you start to piece the puzzles together. I still work my job. I still do this. I'm doing this. And then all of a sudden your logic makes complete sense. And who is it for somebody to tell you that your logic's wrong? If you want to say blindness isn't a spectrum, why does it matter to someone else if you don't think that? So just let people have their approach, I guess. I guess it goes both ways, but and then when it comes to my logic, it's like I moved to New York City because I wanted it to not be limited to cars. And also I learned to use a cane really early because I realized that was another thing my mom fell into. And then I also picked, I'm a video editor, but I used to be behind the camera more. And now I just am behind the computer because all I need is my central vision for that. So you can design a life. It just takes some thought. It takes some planning. It takes some really deep introspection. You need to maybe get a journal and write things out. What do you want and how can you accomplish them? And then try to find ways and create goals to kind of reach them. But passivity rarely gets you anywhere.
No.
Unless you're lucky. So you got to be kind of active. And that's kind of when I go back to when I was going on the rant about people being soft. It's like, it's just being passive and, letting life, happen to you. And I think with RP, you kind of got to be a little bit more active. You got to kind of take charge more because if not, you're going to get trampled on.
Yeah, I think I do think sometimes that I actually, this sounds so strange, I am incredibly grateful in a way that I've got RP and Anna has CF, because I sometimes think to myself, would I appreciate and have the gratitude and the outlook on life, like would I even see the game if I wasn't in this current situation? Because if I look at my parents, they had me when they were teenagers. So my dad, who also came from, my mum came from kind of modest background, my dad came from more humble beginnings, and they had me when they were teenagers, and they had a young baby when they were young. They both worked in factory jobs and stuff like that, and my dad didn't get to go on a plane until he was in his 30s. That was he didn't actually leave the UK until he was in his I think mid 30s. And I always remember him saying to me that just look around at this neighborhood that we're in, and all these people, everyone is going to have kids when they're teenagers, and they're going to work in factory down the road. They're going to do that for the next 40, 50 years, and then their kids are going to work at that factory, and then they're all going to die, and that's it. Life over, start to finish. Born here, worked here, died here, done. And that's it. And he was like, don't make the same mistakes I made. Get out there. This is a massive ball of dirt covered in mountains, cities, foreign lands, cool people, and you should get out there and go and taste all the fruits that are on offer on this planet, and just really push me to sort of do that. And then how lucky am I to meet somebody like Anna, who's also got that ticking clock around how's our existence going to be. And if you think about it as a movie, me and Anna would sort of be stood on the sidelines looking in at the world of everybody going on their day-to-day business, their 9 till 5, their corporate jobs, worrying about sending reports or whatever it is they're doing. And we're sort of stood seeing that for what it is. It's like the universe has lifted the curtain a little bit and shown us what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is enjoying the passage of time as best you can and getting as much out of it as you can. And honestly, I just so grateful that I am aware of how many people just waste their weekends. This, so many people, a lot of my friends, a lot of my inner circle, my proper ride or dies, they don't really value their own time. Some of them might catch up on a bit of work over the weekend, and they're not even getting paid for that. They're just, I've got to get this report finished so I can get a head start next week, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. And then on a Monday, I'm like, well, what did you do your weekend? And they didn't do anything with it. And I'm like, wow, you're looking at the world through a different lens to me entirely. I'm looking at, I need to have as much fun and experience as much as I can. It's like I'm on holiday on planet Earth for, 70 summers, and that's it, you're done. Do you get what I'm saying? It's just give me that real kick about make sure you enjoy this while you're here, because it don't last long. I've got that on me. It's like right in my DNA.
Yeah. No, and I fall victim to that a lot too in my weekends. Yeah, that's kind of one thing I struggle with when it comes to, the See-Through podcast and keeping it afloat and keeping it going. It takes a lot of time. And then sometimes I'm like, and you've even said this to me before, you were like, is staring at a screen the way you want to use your years with vision?
Sorry, bro. I'm very direct.
No. And but no, it's such a great question to ask. It's like like I really need to ask myself that. Is like, I spend a lot of my Saturdays and weekends just making the See-Through podcast work because I work during the week, and it's like, all right, well, sometimes it makes me kind of bitter about making keeping the podcast afloat, because it's like instead of being out doing things in the world, I'm here at my desk where I am the rest of the week doing my other work. And but I do get a lot out of this podcast, and I like spreading the messages. But yeah, I think you got to ask yourself, like, all right, what kind of life do you want to have? You can't have it all. That's another thing too. You can't do everything. You can't work, travel the world as much as you do, and have kids, and make all the content, and stay at home all weekend, and stay on the couch. You got to kind of pick. You can't do it all.
100%. I always say you can't have a great body and a great life. That's something I struggle with. You can't have a great body and a great life.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if you're having a great life, right, you have not got a six-pack. Because
true,
you just can't do it. I've tried. Believe me, I have tried.
Unless you just have like really good genetics, I guess that's the only way.
Yeah. Good luck. I mean, if you're flying to Italy on your birthday to have pizza and prosecco, then you're not got a six-pack. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
you can't have the fine wines, the nice foods. Weeks on a beach, relaxing, having fun. You've got to do the work. Can't have it both ways.
I like food too much. Like I do work out, but it's like I also eat a lot of cookies. So to me that's a win-win.
Same. There's no way I'm going to Thailand or Malaysia and not indulging in all their amazing food and beverages and be like, oh no, how many grams of protein's in that? In that green curry. I'm not about, you know what I mean? But then at the same time, when I'm at home, I'm locked down, strict diet, hitting the gym every single day, trying to offset one against the other to get the balance.
That's balance, because it's like, all right, if during the week you're eating clean and working out, by the time you do have that sweet treat, then you're like, you're like, whatever. But if you're just like not working out and eating cookies all day, now you got a problem. Yeah. But yeah, you got to find that balance that works with you.
And I use that analogy with you. You can't have a side hustle and do those sort of hobbies and interests without sacrificing some of your leisure time. You've got to do it, haven't you? You know what I mean? It's So I feel your pain on that regard, because you've got to kind of do it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because even though you're busy, you're traveling, and maybe quickly name off some places you've been, just so everyone can know.
Where have I been? In the last 12 months, I've been to Thailand, Singapore, Switzerland, Denmark, USA.
Yeah.
I tend to overall, where have I been? I've been to Thailand a lot. I've been to Malaysia quite a few times. Been to Cambodia. Been to Japan. Been all over the States. Done Route 66 from Chicago to California. I've been to Canada. Been loads of places in Europe.
You've traveled more in America than probably most Americans.
Yeah, probably. I've been quite a few states. I've been to Alaska. I've been to New Mexico.
Yeah.
I've been to Arizona.
Yeah, you definitely have.
Yeah, I like traveling. It's it's really good. I just like doing stuff. I don't like even at weekends. We I don't know if you're familiar with this term. We have what we call a camper van.
Yeah,
Term you have? Yeah. So it's a van, MPV type vehicle that's been converted. It's got a kitchen in there, a bedroom in there, and that's just a secondary leisure vehicle that I bought. I can't drive it, but we use that most weekends. So if we're not traveling internationally and we've got a free weekend where we don't have any major commitment, and we don't have to go to somebody's wedding or christening or whatever it is, and we've got a spare weekend, we'll just load up the paddleboards, the canoes, throw the dog in the van, head off to a beach somewhere, head off into the mountains, head off to a forest, and just be out in nature having a great time. Just anything, just to be out doing stuff and having fun.
Yeah, no, you definitely you walk the walk on that one.
Yeah.
And if anyone's new to Steve, just click on his Instagram in the show description and check out all his travels, because he posts about it on there. But yeah, I think that's so awesome that you get to go out and do all that, because that's like I would consider that like a blessing, like the fact that you get to do all that. Not many people get to do that, and I think that's awesome that you have someone to enjoy it with.
Yeah, well, I prioritize that. That's what
Yeah.
If I look at my lifestyle and my home, all the people I employ have probably got bigger, fancy houses than me and nicer cars than me, but I haven't chosen to have a big fancy house or a swanky city apartment or any of that sort of stuff. I've got kind of a modest environment, because I want the disposable income. I want to be able to go away on holiday a couple of times a year. I want to be able to do activities at the weekend. I want to take my wife for dinner every weekend and once a week in the evening if I can. Rather than some of my friends. I got friends that earn way less money than me, but they've got a way nicer house with a lot more fancy stuff inside it. Bigger square footage, fancy TVs and all the rest of it. But they're in that sort of zone that my dad always sort of encouraged me to stay away from, which is that sort of building an expensive prison to live in. Because if you overstretch, if you have all of those things and you tie yourself up into all them commitments, then you've kind of got to spend your weekends in that zone, because you probably can't afford to do anything else.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. You don't want to be house poor.
No,
that's what we call it in the States. I don't know if that
house poor.
Yeah, well, it's you have so much money, you spend so much on your mortgage or maybe renovating your house that's literally all the money you have goes into to the house. So therefore, you're house poor because it's all going towards the house.
I mean, if that's what you're into and that's what makes you happy and that's how you want to spend your 70 summers, then happy days. Have at it.
Yeah, some people are built like that.
Yeah.
So let's move back to, not only do you travel a lot, but you work full time. But you do squeeze in some content though. Like I said, you're one of the rare ones. So you've done the RP show. Like, why does someone like you, who seems more anti-content, how can someone be kind of anti-content yet make content?
Well, I guess, approaching 50 and experiencing everything there is to experience with RP, from getting a job, managing a career, navigating promotions, meeting a girl, settling down, getting married, buying a house, going through all them milestones, getting my first cane, my second cane, doing cane trying, losing my driving license, being declared legally blind, going through all of those I guess milestones and transition states. I wanted to give something back to the RP community, especially young guys that may be similar to me, that maybe they could be living in a rough part of Berlin, or some shady neighborhood in Chicago or wherever, and might just be thinking, oh, this is it, me, I'm done for. And I just wanted to put some content out there to sort of try and, like I said before, try and inspire people, just to be like, look, you can get out of that situation, you can have a good life, there are tools and tricks you can do. And then I met Mike in one of the Facebook groups, and for those that don't know, Mike, he's a energetic, charismatic kind of guy. He's into fitness, and I'd not really seen anyone with RP doing the stuff that I do, like in terms of fitness competitions, and running events and stuff like that. So we just quickly struck up a bit of rapport, and then that's when the RP show was born. I was like, let's do a YouTube channel for people with RP and try and be like the OGs, to say, look, you got two guys here in the 40s, done most things, both married, both use canes, to try and just put some content out there that might be useful. And we don't have the time that other people have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours refining that content and getting it all perfect, and doing all that editing. But at the same time, we've got enough skill to create some fairly decent content. So we did the RP show, put out a load of content that was supposed to be, I guess, purely aimed at the RP community. And there's a couple of things that we did that are a bit unique. One of them is we made sure our content was not monetized on YouTube, and we made sure that all ads were turned off, because we were thinking this content is for the low vision / RP community. We don't want adverts popping up in the middle of our content, and we're not trying to make money out of it. I'm not going to leave my job heading up an operational readiness function in telecommunications to be an influencer. That's not what I want to be doing. So monetizing it, absolutely never doing that, not accepting that, not having adverts on our content, and also not targeting the sighted people like a lot of the content creators out there that are doing a lot of this content to either raise awareness or become famous. We just weren't going down that avenue. We were just trying to create something for men predominantly struggling with RP and coming to terms with sight loss, and approach like the big subjects like using a cane for the first time, telling your employer that you're gonna have to start using the cane. We just wanted to go down that route, and we did it for a little while. We pumped out some content, mixed response from the community. We sort of noticed if we put anything out that was a bit dark and negative, that always seemed to get more views and interest than if we put something, say, super positive out there. All the super positive stuff we did just didn't really seem to whip up much, likes and interaction with the community. But we put something negative out there around, oh, here's 10 things that the RP community hate. Instantly, that'll be like, thousands of views. It just seemed to be a bit of a negative bias around it. And then I decided, as well as the RP show, just to create a dedicated Instagram channel, because I've noticed a trend where long form content seemed to be dying. YouTube videos and people sitting down and watching a YouTube video for 30-40 minutes seem to be dying, and shorts and reels and clickbait seem to be taking over. So I thought, well, I'll do a Instagram account and I'll just stick to 60-second videos. And I thought to myself, rather than just going at the RP community, I will just keep it a little bit more trying to showcase what can be done as a low vision individual, and just try and post things like when I'm traveling or doing stuff in the gym that just might be interesting to the low vision community, but maybe also interesting to some of the sighted community as well. So I went through a phase of making sure all my videos started with me using a cane, and then cut to me jumping out of an airplane, or me hiking on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, or me skiing down a mountain, because I wanted that like polarization stereotype of scene 1 I'm walking with a cane, in scene 2 I'm skiing down a mountain. I wanted that sort of that contradiction in visuals, if you like. So that's where I'm at with my content, I guess.
So you started making content not for the sake of becoming a influencer, but from the sake of perspective of you just want to share some wisdom.
Yeah, I wanted to share some wisdom, wanted to help, like I say, predominantly young men. Yeah, I noticed in the RP community and in a lot of the groups, the women seem to be so much more proactive in terms of seeking support, talking about how they're feeling.
Yeah, the women are killing it.
Yeah, they go for cane training.
Yeah.
They get their stuff, they get their shit together really quickly, whereas men tend to go into like lone wolf mentality and probably don't speak to their friends about it, and don't, all the stereotypes that you see online basically. And I thought, well, maybe if me and Mike, because 2 gym bros post RP content out there, maybe the men that aren't going to go in the RP groups talking about the feelings, they might watch our YouTube content and they might resonate with it. And many men did, and many men contacted us directly. Mike and I, both of us, have had loads of direct messages of people where we've helped them or mentored them, or they've asked us questions privately around, thinking about using a cane, should I do this, should I do that? And interesting, out of the 19,000 people in the RP group, we kept posting that content religiously, and out of the 19,000, it was like predominantly 6 men that came out of the woodwork. You, Vinny, Eric, Ed, and Mike. You guys seem to resonate with some of it, and then we started talking, and now out of those 19,000 people, I've got like six lads that I consider to be my friends. They're not like people I know online. Like, you're a friend, Vinny's a friend, Eric's a friend. We've spent time. I've travelled to the States and been to most of your homes, and that was a great thing to come out of it. And when people say, if I could just inspire one person, then I've done my job, it was kind of like, that was always my mentality. I wasn't really after the thousands and thousands of subscribers, and particularly didn't go after any other low vision, Stargardts or macular degeneration. I just wanted to zone in on men with RP. That was the group I was looking to help.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I'm having a bit of a shift at the moment. I'm now just posting content on Instagram, and that's just general content for the sighted or the low vision community, just around, life with a cane and getting up to adventures and stuff that I just find interesting. But I don't post a lot. I don't have much time to do it. I'm really rubbish at it, to be honest, because sometimes I could be doing something really cool and I completely forget to film anything.
Oh yeah. Well, that's something that bothers me. Is there's sometimes where, like, I notice if I go on vacation now, I don't take any photos, I don't take any videos, because I'm like, I don't want to be on my phone.
Yep.
Because my whole life not on vacation is on my computer or my phone. So
it's like a busman's holiday, as we say.
Yeah, but there's something to that though, about like, and not everything in this kind of climate of like social media, everything is content. You could technically be making content 24/7. It's like, here's me brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
It's like, not everything needs to be content. You can have some private moments. You can be off the clock. You don't always have to make stuff. And I think, that's one thing I do give influencers credit for, is like, they're just always making content. And I would lose my mind if I just always had to make content,
I mean, fair play to them. I don't know how they do it sometimes, because if I do make content now, it's like you say, it's a couple of shots. I never use a tripod. I never use a camera. It's only my phone. That's it. The only thing I use, just my phone. I haven't got any other equipment. I don't take any other equipment. I don't take tripods. None of that. So it's why my content's probably poor and doesn't blow up on social media. But at the same time, if I can do it in a few minutes, I'll do it. If I can't, then I won't. But
well, that's kind of the catch with content, is if you don't post a lot and frequently, then you don't gain the audience. So it's like you have to really go for it, you know. And most people don't have the time to do it. But I going back to the point of making it, I think you make a good point. It's like you just want to help somebody. You just want to help people. And I think that's awesome. I think that's the type of content that should be made. It's like it's helpful to others, and it's not just self-indulgent. You know, it's not like, I feel like a lot of content is self-indulgent. It's like, here's me, like me.
Yeah.
Here's something. Here's me being cool. You know, where, you know, somebody might interpret you jumping out of an airplane as you bragging about jumping out of an airplane, but it's not. The intention is, hey, you know, I'm almost blind, and here I am jumping out of an airplane. You know, so
yeah.
I always think about intention with things. You know, like, what's the intention?
Yeah, it's funny as well, because like, I think everyone probably goes through this with RP, because the people that tend to find me inspirational are my fully sighted friends. They're like, wow, you should post this online and you should monetize it, you'll be a millionaire, blah blah blah. That's what sighted people think will happen if I post a video of me skiing down a mountain, being guided over radios with my blind vest on and all the rest of it. They think, wow, that's amazing, that's so cool, you should post that, and it'll inspire thousands of lads with RP to take up skiing. And it's like, so I got sucked into that a little bit, because a lot of my friends were telling me to post stuff, because they're, you know, see me do all this kind of stuff, and they're like, yeah, you should do this, you should you know, you do all this cool stuff, you travel the world, you do these amazing things, and you never post it online, you should start doing it. So, you know, that played a factor into it as well. But then, like I said to you at the beginning, I quickly realised it doesn't actually motivate or inspire anybody, really. You know, the only people that really like it are like my actual friends and totally sighted people. They find that, you know, really cool, me walking down a mountain with a cane. But everyone that uses a cane is just like, well, yeah, so what? I've walked down a million mountains with my cane. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, it is. The audience of the blindness community, the audience is strange. It's like, I feel like most of my traction with on YouTube and with the C2 podcast is from people outside of the disability blindness community.
I think I'm leaning more into that now. I think and
I don't even try it, I guess. I mean, I'm talking about these topics, but I guess, you know, I think people are interested in it. They think I think people are drawn to blindness out of fear. So it makes them they're fearful of blindness. So when they're scrolling on their phone and they see something about blindness, they're like, ooh, I don't know how I could do that. You know, and then they kind of get sucked into maybe what the content is about. Or they're people like me who are newly diagnosed. Like, that's kind of my main goal. Like, you know, you mentioned who your main audience is men with RP. Mine is people newly diagnosed.
Yeah, that's a really great audience to go after.
That's like my goal
the most. Yeah.
And sometimes those people are just diagnosed and they're just now starting to experience symptoms, so they may feel like they're fully, you know, have a full field of vision, but then they have to mentally, you know, wrap their mind around, you know, that they're going to lose vision. So so they can interpret it as a sighted person would. Whereas, like, if someone's born blind and they stumble upon my podcast, they're probably gonna get bored by it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think me and Mike have the same thing with the RP show, and I'm very conscious of that. It's
people, you know, who have been living with blindness for a long time are bored by it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess I am as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't consume a lot of that content myself. It's not what I would, you know. it's a bit like you going on holiday and not taking loads of photos and videos. Like, I'm not in my spare time and downtime gonna sit and watch a ton of videos about being blind, am I? You know, I'm not gonna get much from that. I already know what that's like. I'm not gonna consume that sort of content. I'm more likely to watch a random video about a cat jumping out of a tree or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because it's like, all right, well, sometimes you gotta ask yourself, who is this for? You know?
Yeah. I like the notion of doing it for newly diagnosed people, because that strikes a chord with me. That's who, if I could get my content in front of somebody, it would either be parents of someone that that got diagnosed with a child or something, or somebody newly diagnosed, especially somebody that thinks, oh shit, I've just been told I've got RP, my life's over. And I almost want to be that voice that says, oh no, it isn't, it's not.
Yeah.
You can arm yourself, and that's why I advocate going for cane training and all that good stuff. And I always mention, sharpening the axe, getting the tools like you're doing. You're a great role model for people like that, because like you said, now you're preemptively starting to use the cane or learn to use the cane. And what a great time to learn the cane while you can still see. That's perfect. Like, why didn't I do that? Why did I not think to do that when I could still see, instead of waiting until I was, starting to lose my vision? It's got to be easier to learn when you can still see.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel like a role model, or would even describe myself as a role model.
You certainly are, Lance.
Because I don't even use the cane, so it's like, I don't know. There's parts of me that are cool, I guess, but there's also parts of me that I have a lot to work on. You don't
use the cane.
That's how it goes.
But you know how to use the cane, and you've had the training, and you've got the fundamentals, and you've changed your location, and you've got a bit of a life plan going. So, you are a well-organised, well-structured person who set themselves up for success. Like, in a way, you can't fail. You are gonna be absolutely awesome.
I hope so. I like you, I've tried to design a certain life, but sometimes life has other plans, so hopefully things keep going.
Totally.
Well, Steve, we've talked for almost 3 hours now, so
wow.
that's already a record, for the See Through podcast. But I don't want to end just yet, because there's one story I wanted to pick your brain about. You kind of alluded to it earlier, where you were talking about your friend group asking permission. They mentioned that you like to ask for forgiveness versus for permission.
I've been known to do that from time to time.
Yeah, and I think it would be unfair to not give an example. And I remember one story in particular about, it was a kayak trip, and it involved you getting onto a boat, and you had to, and if you were to identify as, visually impaired, low vision, blind, whatever the word is, they would have said no. And so you decided to pretend that you were sighted and just kind of take the cues and be guided, in this kayak. I'm probably butchering the story. How about you tell the story?
Yeah, close. It was actually a paddleboard, not a kayak, so similar.
Oh.
It was what it was I seen this thing online, and it was a paddleboard expedition. So for people that don't know, paddleboard is like a really big surfboard, usually inflatable, and you stand up on it, and you have like a kayak paddle, but you stood up on a board. Quite popular now. And I've seen this amazing expedition where you go to Norway and you paddleboard some of the Norwegian fjords, which are basically melted glaciers, and you're just out in the wild for 7 days, and you have your paddleboard, small tent, a ration pack, and a small group of you, and ex-military sort of guide professional who takes you off on this adventure into the wilderness. And I wanted to do it, and I didn't want to do it because it involves going to the bathroom outside in the woods and just basically digging a hole, living in a small tent for a week, no shower, all that sort of stuff. So I was asking around, and I managed to find one of my friends that was willing to do it and had the money and the capability to do it. So we booked this trip, and when we were starting to book it, we then come across the health and safety sort of disclaimer, and there was a couple of things, like you had to be able to paddle 10 kilometres and be fit enough and able enough to paddle 10 kilometres. I think you had to be able to swim, I think it was like 200 metres fully clothed, something like that. There's quite a few, like, you know, things like that. Be able to assist around the camp, help set up camp, take down camp, you know, on dodgy terrain and difficult to access terrain. Be able to climb and navigate through various different types of terrain, sometimes carrying equipment. Now that all is it's quite tricky for someone with RP, but I could just tell from the way it was all written that if I'd inquired and said, can I come on this expedition, by the way, I am legally blind and I'm a cane user, I just had this really strong feeling that they just wouldn't let me do it. So I asked my friend, are you cool with me basically lying on this form and saying that I'm fully able, sign the waiver to say I'm fully able and I can do all this stuff and I'm absolutely fine, and you'll just have to guide me covertly without ever revealing that I can't actually see what I'm doing. So he agreed, and off we went. We did the trip. It was really, really good. And on day 3, when we're in the middle of nowhere, a storm hits, and there's rock slides and there's, you know, conditions that are too unsafe for us to continue with the trip, and we need to be rescued. And as part of the rescue, we could carry the gear to a nearby point of exit where the organizer had arranged for a normal ship or a cruise ship type vessel to come and collect us the following day. And in order to do that, what we'd have to do is hike to this area, collapse all the paddleboards, and then the guide said to us, this is just a tourist ship, like a cruise ship. It's not supposed to be doing this. They're just sort of doing it as a favour. We have got to haul arse and get all of our gear onto this big ship. We have to run down this like jetty and fireline all of the equipment up this plank on and off the boat. So we really need everyone to hustle fast, and we'll get a big line going and we'll throw each item from one person to the next, and we'll have some people on the dock, some people on the bow of the ship, some people on the plank, and we'll just throw tent to tent to tent to tent to tent to tent, then throw each paddleboard from one person to the other, and we'll just get all the stuff going and just get, you know, really hustle to get everything on this boat in these strong winds and the boat rocking around like this and pouring down with rain. And when we found out this was going to be the plan, I knew I was not going to be able to fake that. Like, I am definitely going to end up falling overboard, falling off the jetty. I mean, just somebody throwing something to me and me being able to catch it is not possible. Like, you can't throw a sleeping bag to me and me catch it. That's just not going to happen. So we had to tell them. We had to come out of the closet, as it were, and say, look guys, just so you know, Steve's actually been on this trip. We're on day 3 and he's legally blind. He doesn't actually have that much usable vision. He's only got like 10% in his left eye. And everyone was absolutely shocked. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that we'd managed to survive for 3 days on this trip without revealing that I couldn't really see that well. But when we were on the water paddling, I'm just paddling along on my board next to my friend in this small group, and every now and again he'd say, oh, you need to move over to your left a little bit, or you need to move to your right a little bit. So on the water, if you think about it, it's actually really easy. A large open space body of water, you know, miles in every direction. There's no obstacles, there's nothing to trip over. As long as I don't crash into one of the other people, it was fairly easy. It's only when the trip went wrong that we got exposed. So yeah, we had to confess, we had to tell them that I couldn't see, and they weren't that happy about it. And we got evacuated. We got back to camp, and the guy that owns the company, he's ex Special Forces from the British military. And I, by this time, I was out. I told him, you know, this is the deal. So I walked back into base camp with my cane, and I walked into camp, and the head guy had obviously noticed me. He never said anything to me, but he said something to the other people. You know, just made it known that he wasn't happy that I'd not told the truth. And then I did my classic ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So I just wrote an email explaining, look, this is why I decided not to mention it. This is why I decided to lie on the form, because I knew you wouldn't let me do the trip if I'd have told you the truth. La 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 la. But I'm a competent outdoorsman. I'm a competent paddler. I had my own guide with me, and I hope you can forgive me for sort of misleading you. And just as a footnote, I put it's very difficult for people like me to get on these types of expeditions because people assume that we are going to be a burden or we're not going to be safe. And could you write me a recommendation to say I've been on this trip, I've performed really well, I've managed to do all of these things and achieve all of these things, and that almost like a bit of a disclaimer that I could use when I do other extreme activities or expeditions and stuff like that. And he replied to me, and on his mail he said, whilst we can't condone your behaviour, the whole team admit that this is an absolutely ballsy decision to make, and can't believe you sort of pulled it off. And he said, had you told us you were legally blind, we think we could have made arrangements with the insurance company, and we may have been able to get you on the trip above and all above board. But there was a lot of mays and should and maybe and could have and possiblies in his email that made me think I did the right thing, because if I'd have been up front, there's no way they'd have let me do that trip.
Yeah. I think that story is a perfect summary of you. Because
I've done that multiple times. It's just amazing the amount of things you can't do because people are worried that I might sue them or I might, complain or, and I'm happy to sign any waiver. But the problem is there are people out there, aren't there, that were not like me, they're not as positive to me, and if they did trip over in a store, they're going to sue somebody. If they did fall in the water and get injured, they're going to be like, well, I'm blind and you should have done this and you should have protected me and da 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 da. So, I'm trying to be a positive person in that regard to say, look, I'm happy to sign a waiver and put, I don't need any special arrangements as such. I'm willing to take the risk at my own risk without any causing any problem for anybody else. I'm not about to sue you because I've hurt myself.
Oh yeah, and I guarantee you they've told your story. Your guides have told your story so many times. Like you wouldn't believe it. This one time we had this one guy on our team, and he was legally blind and didn't tell anyone, and we get stuck on the third day because of a storm, and then he tells us.
What's really funny is if that storm hadn't happened and we hadn't have had to be evacuated, they would still never know. Because I would have got away with it. Because my friend, he's guided me, he's guided me swimming through caves in Thailand. He's guided me on marathons. He's now guided me paddleboarding on expedition. He's an expert guide, and he was guided. He did, respect and props to him. He had to, around the campfire at night, dark, low light. He had to sort of help me cook my food and hot beverages without anybody really noticing, and just make it seamlessly sort of fit in. It's quite a lot of skill to pull that off in hindsight.
Yeah, shout out. What's his name? Chris
Judge.
Shout out to Chris Judge.
I'm lucky in that regard. I've got a few what I call extreme guides that have, become very, very, very proficient at guiding me in some very peculiar situations.
Yeah, and then having a guide as a guy, does that feel weird at all?
No, not to me. I mean, it's funny when Mike first came over to the UK, he was a bit surprised to see how I guide with my friends. So when I'm with my guy friends, a lot of the time they'll just tell me to put my cane away and grab onto the shoulder. Like if we need to hustle in a certain scenario, they'll just say grab on, and grab on means take my shoulder. Don't question it. Take my shoulder right now. We're gonna haul ass. And that's just a non-negotiable between me and my friends for whatever reason that might be. And to me, grabbing onto one of my friends physically, holding onto another guy's shoulder, it's not something I have any problem with doing. It doesn't bother me. I don't get embarrassed by it. I'm not bothered if I'm walking into a bar or a nightclub or a dance floor or whatever it is. It doesn't faze me. in any way. I'm not embarrassed by it. It's, you know, it's a very useful tool. It's amazing how much better it is holding onto someone's shoulder than it is even using a cane. It's like,
oh yeah,
it's like
they're like
4K.
the ultimate cane, right?
Oh, brilliant! You can feel, you know, I've ran at speed through complicated scenarios, just holding on to the back of somebody's shoulder, and you can feel any little body movement. If they go up and down a little step, you can feel it. It's you know, so I'm kind of used to that sort of thing.
Yeah, the closest thing I've done is whenever I was guiding you through Grand Central Station to get,
oh yes,
we had to catch that train.
Yeah.
And we were booking it through the train station. And I was just like hoping, and you were doing the method where you were tapping your cane so people would hear it.
Yeah.
And it totally worked. And it's like I got to experience the beauty of the cane, the use of the cane through you. But we barely made that train.
Yeah, we were literally running through Grand Central, and like Lance is saying, you know, that's a good tip that I've learned over the years, because I typically have a ball on my cane which doesn't make any sound, but if you have a marshmallow tip and you slap the cane on the ground like tick tock tick tock tick tock, you're coming up behind somebody. That does draw their attention, and I think blind people forget this, that when they're walking up behind somebody with a cane, they can't see you because you're behind them. So you can't get too angry if they don't move out of your way or they stand on your cane or whatever, because they can't see you. But tapping the cane has that really good effect where it draws attention. And yeah, I was holding on to you, we were running, and I wasn't using the cane for me. I was tapping that cane on the floor quite loudly just to draw attention to us, so people would turn, see us, see all these two guys running, one of them's blind, let's move out of the way. And it totally worked, didn't it?
It did. We made the train just in time. I think it was like maybe 30 seconds to spare, I think.
Yeah.
Barely made it. That was awesome.
So I don't mind that, and I'm quite lucky because I've got a lot of guys, you know, good group of friends that guide me, and you know, if we're ever in a bar, it's just ingrained in them. If they go in the bathroom, you know, straight away they're just like, "I'm going to the bathroom. Do you need a wee?"
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I'll come with you. And they're just so good. You know, a lot of credit to my mates for that. They're really, really great at guiding me, and they're just like, grab onto my shoulder, you know, we'll take you. And sometimes they play a lot of pranks on me as well. I'll just finish on this little story which I love. It's one of my favourite things that's ever happened to me. We were backpacking around Thailand. We were in a really big train station in Bangkok, a bit similar to Grand Central Station, but way bigger. And it's where this sort of subway, and they have a thing called the Sky Train, which is like a monorail which goes between all the city scrapers and stuff, and then the overland rail network. They all converge in this big massive train station, and we were like transiting from the Sky Train to like the normal train. And I was holding on to my friend's shoulder, and we were hauling ass through the train station, not quite as fast as me and you. We weren't running, but we were walking pretty fast. And he did that thing, have you ever seen this, when somebody stands behind like a sofa and they pretend to be walking downstairs?
Yeah.
You know, like they might do to make a child laugh or whatever.
Yeah.
We were walking through this like plaza, and he pretended to walk down a load of stairs, right, that weren't there. And he just progressively lowered himself and went down onto his knees. And I panicked and really shit myself, because I thought I was going to fall down a massive staircase. And my feet were not matching up with what my hand was telling me, because he just went like this in stages. Yeah. And I was like, oh, where's the stairs? And we were going dead fast. And then in a panic, I actually fell on top of him, and we both fell over in the train station. And we had these huge backpacks on, and the weight of the backpacks just sort of pulled us both onto the ground. And he was laughing his ass off, and we couldn't get up because we had backpacks on, and we were lay on the floor in the middle of this train station in the middle of Bangkok, laughing our heads off. And I was just like a turtle that had been rolled over. With like the pair of us couldn't get up, and I've just never forgotten that. I thought, you know, props to you, mate. That was a great prank, and I totally fell for it. And I really panicked because I thought I was about to fall down a load of stairs, and it was a total fake. He just caught me when my guard was down. I was weak, I was vulnerable, I was tired, wasn't expecting it, and that's a bit of British lad humour for you right there. That's the type of thing.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to laugh at yourself too.
Oh, totally.
And I think once your friends feel comfortable making jokes like that, I think that's when you know you made it, because it's like now the Band-Aid's ripped off. Now everyone's comfortable with you using a cane or needed to be guided. I think when everything feels uptight and tense and people are like, I don't know if I can make a joke. I think that's when it's awkward, and when it's not, it's like let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's make some jokes about each other and move forward.
Personally, I love that. I think the humour is a great way of normalising the situation. It's a great way of breaking down the barriers. It's a good way of making the sighted person feel comfortable with the blind person, and vice versa, and make them feel like they can ask you questions about it, and they can be unburdened around any sort of stress and anxiety. And my sort of natural nature, I sort of encourage that. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. If that's gets it out in the open, if it gets the conversations going. I mean, even in the workplace, just very quickly, some of my colleagues, they printed out some black paper and stuck it on the inside of my screen in the office. And when I came in the morning, I was trying everything to log on and get my laptop to connect to the big screen. And I mean, if anyone found out about this, like the bosses at work would probably go mad, because they literally went on the printer and just printed out a massive black square and stuck it on my screen. And then they're all sat laughing, watching me. And I'm obviously visually impaired, trying to get my laptop to connect to this big screen and wondering why it's not working. And one of the guys said, like, have you tried touching the screen? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, just try touching the glass. And I was like, why would I touch the glass of the of the monitor? And they were like, well, maybe there's a loose wire, just give it a tap. And when I touched the screen, I instantly could feel that there was paper on it, and I just pulled this paper off, and my screen had been there the whole time, and I deleted a bunch of emails and all kinds of stuff. My system had been going crazy, and it was all just a big prank. And there's about 4 or 5 guys in the office that had all just been watching me from afar, absolutely laughing their asses off. And stuff like that you just couldn't do on a sighted person. So it was just really, really good.
And now some people would get pissed off by that. Why is it that you didn't?
Probably because it was good natured, and they're my friends, and they were. It's not like those guys will play that prank on me, but at the same time, am I like, absolute support network in terms of if I need a ride home, if I need a ride in, if I need help in the canteen, if I need, they take me. We have a lot of social activities outside of work, going to bars and clubs, and it's all from a place of love and care and positivity. You know what I mean? It's very lucky to have that sort of environment, a fun-filled, creative, supportive environment around me. In work and at home, which is can't ask for more than that in life, can you?
No, not at all. Yeah, I think when it comes to humor like that, I think intention is always what I think about. Like, was it, if that was like a stranger, breaking into
that's very different, isn't it?
Breaking into a place where blind people use computers and they put black paper on all of them, then that's kind of cruel. But friends, pranking friends it's just a good time. In my mind,
Yeah. I give as good as I get.
Yeah. Well, man, I think we've covered. We definitely have the longest See-Through podcast episode to date, and we're sitting around almost 3.5 hours now.
Wow. We started pretty heavy, didn't we? Pretty serious. We went straight in with the heavy stuff. So we might, we may have lost a few people. If anyone that stayed to this point, then props to them. Hope they enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool because we started out the episode with talking about your take on blindness as a spectrum, and then we basically talked about why you have that opinion, and why you have the why your thoughts. Basically, we diagnosed how you think, and we figured it out. We walked through your whole life almost, and how you came to be, the 47-year-old Steve that you are now, or you are going to be soon, right?
Yep.
And I think what's cool about all this is that, well, it could be, depends on how you look at it, cool or depressing, but it's like RP is a progressive disease, so it's always changing. And when you're 57, you'll have even more stories to tell and more more to report on, and you'll have more changes into your wisdom and how you perceive things. And it's just a never-ending story. So if you have progressive eye disease, just know that you can be proactive instead of reactive, and just try to enjoy the process and design a life that you want. And you have more say in that than you think you do. And that's how I would frame this episode. And also, you don't have to think the way everyone's telling you to think online. You can have your own brain. If you don't want to make, out content for the algorithm, don't. If you don't believe in a thing that the whole community widely believes in, you don't have to. You're your own person. And you can march to the beat of your own drum, that type of thing. I think you're a good example of that.
I like that. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I do try to live and breathe that. Be authentic, be yourself. If people don't like you, they don't like you.
Yeah. You're doing okay.
I'm happy with, the people that can tolerate me seem to like me, and I like them. So it's a good way of, as you said at the beginning, cutting through the noise,
Yeah, well, if you don't, then you just have fake relationships with people, and then that's not the way to be either. You don't want to find yourself in a trap of that either, where it's like you don't really like people, but you just have to act like you do.
Yeah, situational friends.
Yeah. Well, man, let's wrap this thing up, man. 3.5 hours, a long time. It was an experiment for me. I've always wanted to do a really long form. I've come close in the past, but I think this one, I just want to see what it was like to do a really long episode, and you were the perfect guy to talk to. So thanks for taking the time, because you worked earlier. So thanks for taking the time to jump from that to this, and I'm excited for this to be out there.
Thanks a lot for having me on, dude. Really enjoyed it.
All right, man. Take care.
Take it easy.